Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the October 27th, 2016 Planning and City of Prescott Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Our commissioners here today, on my right, Mr. Phil Good, Mr. Joe Gardner, George Sheets, Ken Maverack, on my left, Len Scamardo, and Mr. Terry Marshall. I'm Tom Menser, I'm the chairman. And let's get started. I need approval of the minutes for September 29th. There are no minutes for October 13th. Do I have a motion?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I brought up earlier the fact that I feel that the minutes in general are much too general in nature and they need to be much more specific. I know I made a number of comments regarding the my concern about the dramatic increase in density relative to the recently approved general plan. Those comments are not included. I also made a comment regarding the notification of the general public regarding the expansion of the downtown business district and the density proposals in that area, and my suggestion that the public in general be notified in more broad manner. Those comments are also not included. So I find the minutes to be inadequate.
Okay. Now, you did have time to communicate that with planning staff? You had adequate notice? In other words, you got the minutes early enough that you could comment. Did you put in a written comment to the planning staff?
I did not.
Okay. I think you could if you wanted to. Right, staff? Okay, good.
I'll do that next time, Mr. Chairman.
I think it might be a good idea. Get it down in writing anyway. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
minutes are approved. All right, regular action items. Number 2, special use permit for the installation of a cell tower at Copper Basin Road. George?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for, let me try this without the lamp on. There we go. This is a request for installation of a cellular communication tower on a location residentially zoned off of Copper Basin Road. Its access is actually off of Wickwood Lane. The requirements for installation of cell towers generally are that you obtain a special use permit, which is the process that's advertised and on your agenda today. Special use permit is a review and approval process that involves a recommendation by this body and then formal action by the City Council subsequent to your recommendation. The process is a public process, so we spent quite a bit of time advertising, sending notices, making sure that nearby property owners knew what was going on. They've been invited to this meeting. They were invited to previous meetings. As a result of a publication of a public hearing notice that set your October 13th meeting as a public hearing, we re-noticed your November 10th meeting as the public hearing. So today is a discussion, question and answer, information gathering, but not a voting meeting on this subject. So the request is to install a monopole antenna on a site that currently contains a city water tank. That water tank is shown in the picture as the very pretty round green spot down here. The antenna is intended to put just to the north side of that. The antenna proposal is to create a small compound, fenced compound with some ground-mounted equipment. The antenna actually will be located within that compound, and that separates it out and protects it from accidental damage or access via other folks. The current water tank is approximately 35 feet tall. The antenna is proposed to be 70 feet plus an additional amount above that for a stealth arrangement, a faked pine tree arrangement for this one. That's mostly in recognition of the pine forest around it and the higher elevations to the south of it. I do have a rendering from Verizon, which I'll put up to give you an idea of what they believe it will look like. The stealth antenna application generally requires an additional few feet, and in this case, it's actually a total of 85 feet in height. The antenna is located approximately 40 feet from the east property line, or excuse me, the compound with the antenna in it is located approximately 40 feet from the east property line. As part of our review and approval process for SUPs, there are certain criteria that council can waive from typical zoning. One of the issues that we always run into is the height of the antenna. None of our zoning districts have a permitted height of more than 50 feet. There are certain circumstances that allow you to go beyond that. Certain zoning districts allow an extension up to 100 feet by a council action, specifically relating to SUPs for antennas. Council has the ability to waive that height as part of their approval process to allow them to exceed the district height limit. That would be necessary in this case. There's insufficient room to a 50-foot antenna or a 35-foot antenna, as a zoning district would allow, is down at the same height as the tank. It would not be sufficient according to Verizon and their engineering. The other issue that's typical, in this particular case applicable, is a setback variance. Our land development code requirements for antennas are typically to have a setback distance equal to the fall distance of the monopole. They typically don't simply fall over, but that's our setback in case that should happen. In many cases, that's something that's not met by the site, and that is also subject to council's ability to waive those requirements. So the city council could reduce the required setback and can allow for a higher antenna height as part of their approval process. It is appropriate for this body to make recommendations in both of those situations. So if you find yourself in position of recommending for or against this, you can include criteria associated with those height extensions or the setback criteria. The antenna proposal is a typical one that you've seen many times before. I'm going to show you the stealth antenna type of an arrangement. There are 3 antenna arrays at the top. Those arrays are pointed in different directions based on the engineering requirements of the cell provider. Those arrays are typically hidden within the tree in these circumstances. Most other cell installations in town are not stealth. They don't include the pine tree disguise. Just a quick look at the site plan. The property in question is a flag-shaped property that actually has frontage on Copper Basin Road, but the topography doesn't allow access via Copper Basin Road. So the access to the site is, again, off of Wickwood. And there's a pretty clear intersection down here. I don't know if you had a chance to go visit the site, but it's pretty easy to find once you spot Wickwood Lane. The request, again, is for an 85-foot stealth antenna installation. It's reduced setback for 40 feet approximately for the location adjacent to the east property line. Notices were sent to adjacent property owners. We have had a lot of response in regard to that, written responses. So you have a number of them that were included in both the October 13th packet, the packet for this meeting, and then some that we received later were hand-delivered and placed in front of you for this morning. We do have representative here from Verizon who can speak to the location, the reason for choosing this site. We also have, very typical of almost all of our cellular tower applications for special use permits, we have a number of concerns about federally controlled criteria. The FCC has some limitations on what local government can do, and we have asked our assistant city attorney to be prepared to talk to you about that. So if you'll indulge me, what I would like to do is to turn it over to him to talk about those limitations on your ability to make recommendations and council's ability, and then we'll allow the our Verizon representative to step up. And after that, I believe we have a number of folks from the public who would like to talk.
Sounds good. Mr. Attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Every time we have a cell tower application, it seems to generate a significant amount of interest from the community. So what we do is kind of review the law every time there's an application, because there's a tension between the local land development code and some federal law. The federal law is known as the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And that places 5 specific limitations on what you can do and what the city council can do. The first limitation is the city cannot discriminate against providers of functionally equivalent services. In other words, you cannot favor one company over another. Number 2, the city cannot prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the provision of personal wireless services. Number 3, the city must act within a reasonable period of time on a cell tower application. Number 4, which seems to generate the most interest a lot of times, is that the city cannot deny cell tower applications on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions. Frank, can you do me a favor? And just put that up. This is direct language from the Telecommunications Act of 1996. It's found in 47 United States Code. No local government, which is us, may regulate the placement, construction, or modification of personal wireless service facilities on the basis of the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions to the extent that such facilities comply with the Commission's regulations concerning such emissions. This seems to generate a lot of interest from the public, so I put that up there just to let the public know that's just the state of the federal law. To the extent that the chair and the commission wants to hear any of that information, that's going to be up to the discretion of the chairman. But the city council, when it fundamentally considers this at its meeting, whether or not to accept the cell tower or not, cannot rely on emissions questions or concerns. And the 5th limitation, which doesn't necessarily affect the Planning and Zoning Commission, is that if the city denies an application, it must do so in writing, and the decision must be supported by substantial evidence. That's kind of a recent U.S. Supreme Court case that came down on that. And I know the last time we had a denial, we sent the cell tower a written denial. I think Kirkendall was the mayor at the time, and he would have sent that out. So the Telecommunications Act of 1996 does allow local zoning to play a part. So you are going to be fundamentally constrained to what does the LDC, the Land Development Code, under the SUP, Special Use Permit requirements, allow for or not allow for. And that's going to be up to you guys to hear testimony, review the documentary evidence, look at your very specific role under the Land Development Code for SUPs as concerned cell towers, apply all that information, and make a determination as to whether you think you should recommend an approval or denial of the cell tower. But those are kind of the 5 restrictions that you have under the federal law concerning this. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, and I'm certainly here if it becomes an issue any further, but we kind of like to kind of give that presentation to the public so you have an idea of what the limitations are under the federal law with our local zoning.
Okay. Commissioners, you have any questions?
Well, I'd like to know how the federal government defines environmental effects. How broad is that scope? Does it impact health in general?
Yeah, it's based on actually the FCC's findings of environmental effects. And the law has been in effect under the Telecommunications Act since 1996. Now, your specific question is, how do they define
environmental effects?
I don't. It's based on environmental effects of the frequency emission. I think they're basically talking about health effects to human beings in and around exposure to any radio frequencies. And I know the Verizon applicant is here as well, and he'll be fairly well versed in that. But those are the environmental effects I think they're looking at.
Well, I'd
So-
be interested in knowing that because I've looked at the science, and there's been a number of studies that have been done since 1996. The expansion of cell phone towers, that's 20 years. So if that's been looked at, if there's been any changes to that, I'd be interested in knowing, because that would have an impact on my decision.
I think the Verizon rep can probably cue us in on this, because there's regulatory standards in terms of the broadcasting the signals, in terms of that and the placement and all of that. So I know that they're heavily bound that way.
So what I'm hearing is that basically, if FCC, if the microwaves and other scientific issues and environmental issues is all right under the standards of the FCC, we're not scientists up here, and I don't think we can.
The limitation
I
is
don't think
that
we can
if
sit here and we have to almost say, okay, the FCC is going to accept it. We're not going to sit here and argue about it.
the local approval of the siting of the antenna doesn't give them full approval. They still have to have FCC approval of the equipment, the emissions, those
Right.
types of things are part of their approval process before they can actually install it. I think the intent of this is that, and it's pretty clear, and we've been subject to other situations similar to this, it's a preemption of our local control over that particular aspect of it. Our zoning applies. We have particular requirements in the Land Development Code that we need to apply to this review process. You're well aware of those. We included those criteria in your staff report. Those are the focus of this body and its recommendation.
But one thing I'm getting at is, though, a lot of the negative letters and responses that we got to this, for this cell tower, for both cell towers that we're looking at, a lot of the questions related directly to this microwave and what they did, and cancer causing and all this. A lot of them were related to that. And so you were basically saying, look, FCC accepts it. It's not our decision, based on those kinds of environmental.
For that particular purpose,
questions.
the federal requirements preempt local government, and we are overridden by them.
Okay.
Tom?
Yes,
Yeah.
Lynn.
Yeah. We had the same conversation in the Land Development Code when we went through it, that we ran into these federal regulations that really took the power away from our zoning. So what we were left with in terms of writing code about cell towers was really the height and the setbacks, but not the federal health or whoever it is who has come out with guidelines that we don't know whether they're right, wrong, indifferent, or what they are. And they told us it's no place for you to go. And it's like a similar instance in the Land Development Code. We put a restriction in on, for example, the sober living homes, and then all of a sudden a group came from Washington and said, you got to change it because you're violating federal law. So this has been gone over, and it's a sore spot, I think, with all of us here, that our powers to look at something locally have been taken away by the federal government. And again, I've got to look at it and say, I can monitor the height and the setbacks and the aesthetics to it, but I can't get into the health hazard of what it is because we're precluded of doing that.
I guess that's where I was leaning. I'm addressing the audience when I'm saying this, is we can't get all hung up on the scientific stuff. Basically, as the
the law can't
city
be any
attorney
clearer.
said. Yeah,
It's out of your purview.
right.
We can express our
Verizon
disapproval
says
in
it
the
meets
federal
the
government.
regulations, then it meets the regulations. So it's something you cannot consider in your determination.
Right.
And that was my concern, Mr. Chairman, is that the environmental effects definition is broad enough to cover those potential health impacts, and whether that is included. So I'm sure that the government has a definition of that. and consequently, we may not be able to consider those things.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So I don't want to get hung up on that, on the scientific end of it, and spend a lot of time on it, because it's not going to be pertinent to what we're doing. So onward and upward. Any questions, commissioners? George?
Sir, just wanted to point out, there are a series of criteria in the Land Development Code that the city did adopt as part of our controls over SUPs, specifically for cell towers. Those have been provided to you. They're available from the city's website via the Land Development Code link. Any information specific to those things, we will be prepared to address for you. Those criteria were written long after the 1996 FCC criteria were put in place, so we do not include any of those things that where we were preempted by federal law in the criteria for you to look at in this. So following through on your code and your criteria for the review process will keep you in line with the limitations we have under the federal government. We do have the representative from Verizon here. I believe he can speak to this. And again, I know we have a number of folks in the audience who would like to
Right.
talk to you.
I
You
understand.
received a lot of correspondence in relation to this particular location.
Wouldn't the first item up there, protecting residential areas?
Yes, sir.
We missed it.
Protecting residential areas and land uses from adverse impacts.
Does that consider aesthetics?
It is
part of
primarily
that?
aesthetics.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, no questions. I guess we could hear from the rep for the cell tower company.
Matthew, want this back?
Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, my name is Reg Destry. I work with Reliant Land Services, and I'm representing Verizon Wireless. As many of you have seen me here before, you know what I'm here for. This site, as staff has indicated, is in an area where there have been a lot of people that have given feedback as to the location. And I just really wanted to kind of go through the history of the site, discuss the location itself. I brought along the radio frequency engineer from Verizon Wireless to specifically answer some of the questions about the way the signal propagates from the site and really get more into the actual need for the site, which is more capacity based, so the amount of data the network can handle. And then I'll come back up. I will discuss the actual layout of the site, discuss some of the issues of the height because of the trees in the area, and also the reason that we are asking for that waiver on the setback. And then I'll discuss a few of the mitigating factors that we're proposing for this site based on feedback we've gotten at the neighborhood meeting that we already had and from the letters that we have seen and some of the things that were suggested at that neighborhood meeting that might help make this a bit more palatable for some of the folks in the neighborhood. First of all, just to kind of give a brief history of the site, I'm not sure if you have all been out there, but this is the general area in the southwest portion of town here. We're looking at, obviously we are downtown right now, it is southwest of us. In that particular area, there are a lot of trees, especially around the tank. They start to get quite tall, 50 plus feet tall. And so what this site is actually meant to do is to provide additional capacity and some additional coverage to offload some of the other sites in the area. Now, there is currently a site up on Mount Francis that is the predominant site serving this area. That site, because of its location, provides coverage to a large portion of Prescott, especially this part of town. And so what happens is both now and going forward, it starts to eat up the amount of data that folks use, whether they have a phone that they're using as a smartphone or they have a data device that they're using, whether they're a person living in their home, a worker who's sitting outside your house calling about, hey, I'm here to fix the air conditioning, or any of those things. Additionally, emergency services, as you may know, a lot of the emergency services in town utilize Verizon's network. And in fact, I know that the fire engines, I saw one driving up Copper Basin as we were coming down from visiting the site, and they in fact use tablets in their engines to help them get around. So having reliable capacity and coverage is really something that's of great importance. And so what happened is, much like the other sites I've done in town, the engineer provided me with a location where a site was going to be needed. This is about 2 years ago, and we got started. I looked in the area. It is residential. I mean, it's almost exclusively residential. In the entire area, there were a couple of parcels that were non-residential uses, but it is all zoned as residential. So when we get into an area, or when I get into an area like this, what I look for is existing verticality, first of all, because if there's anything with any height that's already there, that, to me at least, is the best option, and really that's in line with the desire of the Land Development Code as well. In this particular case, the only location anywhere near the search area, and the original search area is the area that is generally outlined in red here. The only location that had existing verticality and was not a fully residential use, there is a water tank right here. This is part of the old network. Before this new Wickwood tank went in, there was a nice big pump house here and a tank, and there's actually an APS pole at that location. Now, that was one of the locations I provided to the engineer as, hey, would this be a possibility? That particular location is actually too far to the east because, as some of you may know, we are about a few months away from locating antennas up on existing poles up at the Indian Gardens water tank right here. So this site is meant to work in conjunction with the new site that you have in front of you today. So what we're looking at was the existing verticality that was available in this area does not work because it ends up being so close to the site that's going to be going in. And so the additional options I provided to the engineer were then to look at this church. There is one church there. It's a 1 acre parcel. This actually was brought up during the neighborhood meeting. That particular site is a bit lower elevation. The trees are a little shorter in the area. However, the topography, especially as you head just to the north, there is a large increase in topography. There's a hill as you go to the north with a lot of houses on it. So it is not as good for signal propagation, which the engineer can discuss. But additionally, there are a lot more homes very close to that property. So if we're in a situation where it needs to be in a residential area to provide the coverage and the capacity that's needed, we start to look, is there existing verticality? Okay, there's not. What non-residential uses are there? And that's kind of where we're at. We're at a church. We're looking at a water facility. And then between those, what works best for engineering to provide the least amount of sites needed? And then what is least impactful upon the neighborhood? And so comparing these two sites, which would be the site at the church, which is not being proposed, or the site where we have in front of you by the water tank. The site by the water tank has better propagation, so it fills in the hole better, it provides capacity better, and it's further from homes, primarily because the lots in that area are a little bit larger. So it has an impact on less people directly near field. Additionally, with all of the trees in that area and the height of those trees, something like this stealth proposal, which is being designed just high enough to get above those trees and provide signal, is something that's being done to minimize the impact and be as in line with the development code as this site can be. So that was the primary site right here at the water tank, 85-foot pine tree. We had our neighborhood meeting. A couple of other options were actually proposed at that time as well. And there were questions asked about the Hacienda lift station, which has a similar problem to the existing verticality at that Village Tank APS site. It is too close to this Indian Gardens site. The engineer can go more into how much area each of the sites is meant to cover, but that ends up being far too east, too close to that Indian Garden site. An additional property, a gentleman approached me with a home up on the hill that it sits several hundred feet up above the tank site, and he suggested, hey, maybe we could look at doing a short structure up there. Sometimes that is feasible. The problem in this particular case is he's so far up the hill that the site ends up going out too high. It kind of leaves us in a similar situation to the existing site up on the mountain, which shoots too far out and covers too much of an area, and that eats up all the capacity that the site has because it serves so many different people. So that site does not work as well as this location we are proposing to fill in this gap. And so to take a look at the actual layout, I know staff had already shown you a map of the particular property. And here is that map again. Where we are looking to go is just northeast of the actual tank, and what we're expecting this will provide in coverage. And this is a rather rudimentary map I've got here, but the engineer has got some additional information he'll be able to provide. This particular map shows the sites that are currently on air. So as of today, these sites are active. And what you're seeing here, this is Mount Francis. This is up on the mountain. And this is the site that primarily serves the area that we're looking at right here. So the other sites are Prescott and Gurley Street. Those are both sites that are in town. One is on Alarcon, one's right on Park Avenue. So they're right in the urban area, and actually both of them are about 50 feet from existing homes. I don't know if you are all familiar with those, but there's a couple of 50-foot poles that Verizon has, and that's what both of those sites are. But what this is showing, this area in yellow, that whole area is primarily served by Mount Francis. So everyone that is in yellow here, any device being used, is all using data off of this one site. So that becomes a problem with the amount of data that can go through the site. It's kind of like you have a water pipe. I mean, you can put a big pipe in, but at some point the amount of pressure that you can put through it ends up being limited. So there's only so much water that can go through that pipe. Well, the plan here is to then bring this site up, and now you'll see that this area ends up being primarily served by this site we're calling Pony Soldier. So it helps to offload a substantial portion of the capacity that Mount Francis has. You'll see there's still a yellow area here, and this is actually the area that is right in the middle of that is the Indian Garden location that will be coming up in a few months. So these sites have been designed to work in conjunction, and in fact, RF will go into this, but there is a future site. This question was asked at the neighborhood meeting. There is a future site that will be going in this general area near the fire station down there. And I've actually talked to the IT folks at the city, and they had asked me independently whether there was ever going to be a site down there, because I know there's an issue with the coverage levels at the fire station down there. But all of those sites are being proposed to help offload and provide additional capacity for that Mount Francis site. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Scott Sanchez, the RF engineer, the radio frequency engineer for Verizon, and he'll be able to go a bit more into what the real need for this site is and why the particular height here is needed to get above the trees. And once Scott is done, I'll come back up and go over some of the site layout and then be able to answer any questions you might have.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Scott Sanchez. I'm a RF engineer for Verizon Wireless, and I'm here to talk a little more about the need for the site. Thank you. All right, so Mr. Destry already covered a lot of these points. This first slide kind of summarizes our points as far as regarding the need for this future site. One thing I did want to point out and elaborate on a little bit more is that we did take into consideration that future site that he referred to, the AZ2 Indian Garden site, which is coming up about 2 miles north of the proposed site, Pony Soldier. We did take that into consideration in looking at our needs for the Pony Soldier site. And what we found is the site that we're trying to offload, which is the Francis site up on the Francis Mountain, is actually still exhausting and running out of capacity by 2018, even after we add the Indian Garden site. And the issue of the Francis site is that being where it is 2 miles uphill from the area where we're trying to cover with Pony Soldier, although it does cover the area today, as the usage increases and we get more users in that area, or the same users just using more data and more data-hungry applications, the coverage is just not sufficient to provide the level of service that we want to provide to our customers, and that's what's triggering the need for this site. So this first slide here is, again, showing the existing coverage. But what we did here is we turned on the Indian Garden site, which is the future site we were referring to earlier. And that's up here. That's Indian Gardens. And then here is the proposed site we're talking about, Pony Soldier. And then down here is the Francis site, which covers the area today. So as you can see in the area around where the Pony Soldier site is being proposed, it's in the yellow and red, where the yellow to red represents marginal to good service level in terms of user throughput. Now going over to the next slide, you can see that when we add in the Pony Soldier site here and turn that on, that area we were looking at earlier that was in the yellow and red zone is now green, where green represents our best level of service in terms of throughput for both indoor and outdoor coverage. And I wanted to go into a little bit of the actual data for the site that we're trying to offload, the Francis site. I think this illustrates the point a little bit better. So I pulled some actual user data for the Francis site, and this is the user perceived throughput data, which is one of the key performance indicators that we look at when we're forecasting the need for future sites. So I trended the busy hour user perceived throughput for the Francis site over 365 days, and what we try to aim for is to keep our user perceived throughput right at about the 5 megabits per second range. So that would be right about there. And as you can see, the Francis has already, in its existing state, is below that level, below our goal. And it's continuing, it's been trending downwards over the last 365 days. And when we ran this through our forecasting tools that we use to predict the need for future solutions, we found that it just continues to trend downwards even after taking into consideration that new site that we talked about, the AZ2 Indian Gardens. And so this kind of illustrates the situation that we're trying to address here with the new site. And then lastly, I was just going to talk for a few moments about the actual design of the site itself and the antenna configuration, the antenna height. So it's part of our engineering best practices that when we design sites that are surrounded by trees, that we have the antennas fully above the tops of the trees. And the reason for that is that we know, it's just a known fact, that trees block and attenuate RF signal. And in fact, in the frequency range that we operate in, which is the 0.7 to 2 gigahertz range, that attenuation can be as great as or even greater than 10 dB, which is a significant loss. And especially considering the types of trees that are in the area around Pony Soldier, the coniferous pine trees, those can be in the higher range of attenuation when it comes to RF signal, just because of the nature of the structure of the trees. So when we first proposed the Pony Soldier site, We had our surveyors and architects go out to draw up the initial drawings, and when they did that, we asked them if they could survey the tops of the trees so we could get a feel for how high our antennas need to be. And they came back and they found the majority of the trees in the area were in the range of about 30 to 70 feet. And that's where we came up with the 70-foot antenna center line. I personally would like to be a little bit higher than that, but I think we can live with 70 feet because, again, the majority of the trees are below the 70-foot range. But that's the reasoning, and that's the why we want to have the center line where it is at 70 feet. And I think at this point, I'll turn it back to Reg.
So in other words, your request basically for 85 feet has to relate to the existing height of some of the existing trees that are in the same area.
That's correct. Right. Right. I mean, we try to be above the tallest trees. The tallest trees we found from the survey that they did was 70 feet. They're not right up against where the antennas are going to be, but they're close enough that we want to try to be above them.
Of course, wherever it is, it has to work, right?
Right. There wouldn't be any point in putting
Right.
it in, if it didn't work. And just one final thing I was going to mention before I turn it back to Mr. Destry is that we actually have a limited budget nowadays when it comes to building new sites, and there's a lot of scrutiny within our own organization to make sure that we're building the right sites in the right place at the right time. And so, our management within Verizon is very adamant about making sure that we do our full due diligence, that we really need a site before we spend the money and resources to go out and build it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, again, thank you. Hopefully Scott was able to enlighten the commission a bit more and perhaps even the audience as well on part of the need for this site. And as he was last discussing, the site has been designed to provide coverage with the least intrusive means possible by getting above the trees to provide the coverage, but keeping it down as close to the trees as we reasonably can. And it's been referenced a few times, and I'll try and zoom in on it. But we do have a survey of the property. The majority of the trees on the property and to the east of the property are about 50 feet tall. So the proposed site is just north of the water tank, and what we'd be looking at is, you can see there's a 60-foot tree, 58, 71, 50, 50, 50. Most of the trees on this property are in the 50-plus foot range, and as Scott mentioned, there is a 70-foot tree just southeast of this. In context to the surrounding area, a proposed 85-foot faux pine tree, it is not out of scale at all. I mean, it's not like this is a pine tree that is standing by itself in the middle of a field. I mean, it is 40, 50 feet away from other 50-foot tall pine trees. I mean, if we were to be proposing a site by itself, we would often be proposing to add a couple additional pine trees. In this case, it is dense pine forest. I mean, the only area that around here that's flat and has no trees is essentially the area that was developed for the water tank, and then the turnaround area in front of the water tank. And that's kind of where we're at. I've actually got some pictures to show what this area looks like right now and get a good feel for some of the trees. I don't know if any of the commissioners have had the opportunity to go and visit the site itself. But this is, and I'll just kind of walk you through these as I show them. This is actually a picture from the water tank facing north. And so the proposed site, we had actually talked to staff initially about the water department about going within the facility. but because of the use that they have, they said they prefer we just go just outside. So we're actually going to be just beyond this fence right here, and there is a bit of land that's there before it starts to drop down the hill. Kind of zooming in, getting a little closer to that. This is actually the location right here. What you're looking at right there is the drive access coming up, but the area we're proposing to go, you can actually see the wisp in the ground. This is the wisp that is the location of the pole. The ground equipment would go right here. And as you can see, there are a lot of trees in the area. I mean, to the east of this, and I'll get to those pictures in a second, there are a lot of trees around. So this is, again, from the water tank. So this is kind of looking northeast from the tank. In this case, our site would be generally off to the left a little bit. But again, I mean, these are the 50-foot trees that are in the area and fairly dense. Looking back toward the site itself to kind of see the backdrop, you've got the tank that is, it's about 40 feet tall. Let me see the exact height. Sorry, it's 33 feet for that tank. And again, you've got trees behind it. Let me zoom out a little bit. But you've got a lot of trees behind it again. So this parcel is surrounded by trees. And that's kind of where we're at with, we are in a residential area, so we've looked for the location that is the most intense non-residential use, this city water facility, and are proposing the site which is most in harmony with the location. And that would be a pine tree. I mean, I don't honestly know in 15 years if I've ever had a more appropriate location to put in a faux pine tree. I mean, the only other place I've ever seen that's had something that it seems to fit in this well would be a couple of spots up in Flagstaff where there are similarly sized ponderosa pines. And, so we've proposed something of this nature. As far as the actual layout on the parcel and the site layout that we're looking at, I'll go back to the survey here for a moment. Actually, I'll use the site plan. It's a little cleaner. So I believe George may have had this up earlier, but we're looking again at the flag-shaped parcel. We'll be coming in off of Wickwood Lane on the existing asphalt road. I believe the city actually put the asphalt on that road. And then it ends up being gravel here, come up to the site. We'd be extending the chain link fence out a bit per the water department's request, and then placing tree and equipment kind of just northeast of the tank. A zoomed in version of that is right here. So just to give you some context, what you'd be looking at, this is the existing fence goes right through here. We would start there, head north. As staff mentioned, this site, it's about 40 feet from the east property line. So in that one direction, it actually does not meet the 1-to-1 setback requirement. The reason that it's actually set up like that was a request from the water department. If you look right here, there is a water line that's buried. And initially, before we knew that water line was there, the proposal was to put the tree right in that general area so that we would be a lot closer to meeting that 85-foot setback requirement. Because of that water line being there, staff asked us to move to the east, as it's really the only direction we could go with the way the land's developed. And so we relocated a bit to the east, and that's why we are now within that 1-to-1. What we can do as part of the process, and I've obviously offered this before, is provide a stamped engineer's letter indicating the reclining length of that tower would fall within that 40 feet without any issue. The setback to the other property lines is quite a bit more. You're going to be looking at something it's 128 feet to the north property line. So I'm going to go back to this slide for a moment. So you're 128 feet to this north property line right here. And in fact, there's a table called out. I don't know if you all have a copy of this. I believe it's in your packet. I don't know if you can read it or not. But the south property line is 232 feet, and that is heading back south of the tank and heading up the hill. The east property line, that's 40 feet, as I mentioned, and then that west property line, it's 171 feet over there. So unfortunately, as staff again had mentioned, the area here is not able to be developed. So what we've done is we worked with Public Works to find what they felt and what is the most appropriate location on this particular site. And so we've drawn it up as such.
I have a question.
Yes.
In all of these little illustrations you've had, we're looking at setbacks. I'm more concerned about where the 70-foot trees are and where your cell tower is. And it looked like one of the slides that you put up showed 60-foot tree, 61-foot tree, 52-foot tree, 70-foot tree. There was only one 70-foot tree or 71-foot tree that I ran up against out of hundreds and hundreds of trees in the area.
So of all the trees, yes, here is our particular location. And then you'd be looking about 50 to 60 feet away. There's that 70-foot tree, and then yes, 60, 56, 50. They did not catch the height on a tree right over here, which is about 55 or 60.
But basically, when we were writing the code, we got that 50-foot and then a special use permit to go up. And we're at 85 feet, and now I think what you're talking about is getting it up, and then your tree itself or your pine tree is going to be what height, and then you're going to be how many feet above it?
And that's an excellent question, actually, because I have right here an elevation of the proposed structure. So when we're talking about 85 feet, we're actually talking about to the top of the top branches that we put on top of the faux pine tree. Part of the reason that's about 7 or 8 feet that sit up on top. So the pole itself ends up being closer to about 75 to 77 feet tall. And then the antennas get mounted. So what happens is with the 85-foot tree, the antenna center line ends up being at 70 feet. So that ends up being about, if we're talking about a 50-foot tree, that ends up being about 20 feet above that tree. Or in the case of that 70-foot tree, again, like you said, there's one right there. So that is not the biggest issue in the world, but we do need to be above the majority of the trees around, and that's where this height comes from. If this were not a stealth type structure, if this were just a straight monopole, it could end up being 10 feet shorter. It could be 75 feet tall, but it would really get the same antenna center line. Okay. So the last 10 feet of this thing really is almost exclusively to create a stealthing effect, because this won't look anything like a ponderosa if the top is chopped off. Yeah. I know down in the valley occasionally we'll do Aleppos, which don't have tops. They're flat on top, and then we can put the antennas up top, but not here.
Okay, I've got a question.
And I don't want to ask a lot of questions because I'd sure love to hear from the public, to hear their points of view. You've been talking for quite a while about the need for it, and I don't think there's a question about need. You wouldn't be here to put up a tower for cell service if there wasn't a need in the region. So I accept there's a need. I do have a question, quick question. The 70, how far is the tower from the nearest house?
It is about 300 feet from the nearest homes. There are two houses that are, let's see here.
That's close enough.
Okay.
Thank you. How far is the tank from the tower?
The tank from the tower, I would actually need to scale that out. I believe it is more than 85 feet, though. I need to check, though. If you can give me just a moment, I'll check the survey. I apologize, Commissioner, I don't have my ruler on me right now, but I can certainly get you that information before the next meeting.
Thank you. I think that's an important item because, one, if the tower fell, not only would we lose cell service, but we probably would lose a lot of water. Mm-hmm. And a catastrophe could happen if it's too close to that tank. So I'm more concerned about the tank.
Okay.
Now that you say homes here. not too far, pretty far away.
I had two quick questions. One, is the access road going in there the one that was used to build the tank? So
Yes.
it's an existing.
Yes, we are not proposing to do any development on that road.
Second question, in the photographs, I really didn't see any houses that were looking directly at the site. Are there?
There are two houses nearby. I believe Janet Conrad will probably be coming up here. I think she's here
Okay.
today.
Okay.
She is located to the north, and her home is probably the house that would have the best view of this location. But as far as I can tell, there would be approximately two houses nearby that may be able to see this site. Some houses further up the hill, that Forkham property I mentioned earlier as a site we looked at, they look down on the site from probably a little over a quarter mile away, and you can see the shiny tank. So in their case, you may be able to see it. In fact, I've got a few photo simulations. These are probably in addition, I believe staff showed you one, but as far as the view, this is actually a view. I'll zoom this back out. So kind of give you an idea on the scale of things. These are a little difficult to put together just because of the amount of trees around. So this is from, I'll show you real quick here, from right here where it enters the property. So it's right here where the access road turns to gravel. That's where this picture's taken from. Okay. And what you end up with is, this is the current view, and then the view once the site goes in would look something like that.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I think we know more about the site than we want to know.
That's good.
And I would like to hear from the public. So I appreciate everything you told us, but I think we need to move on. So I'm going to open it up to the public. Whoever jumps up there first is welcome. I need a name and an address. And please speak into the microphone.
Commissioner and gentlemen, my name is Yvonne Dorman. I live at 1335 Mullen Way, which is like a row of houses over. You know, everybody's hometown is really changing. Our skyline is changing. When these people get through, it's going to be changing even more. There are 50,000 of these towers around the country, and they're going to be obsolete in a few years because new technology is being developed where your own cell phone will be your antenna. So I don't know what's going to happen to all these 50,000 towers in just a couple years. But I want to go back to annexation. That property was annexed in 2003 along with about 60 other acres in that same area. That property was part of an 8.85 acre parcel that came into the city from the county as an 8.85 parcel, which was not to be subdivided. Well, apparently, because that's the rule, as you come in, you stay that way. Apparently in 2012, there was a zoning change that none of us remember seeing signs about. Maybe they were there, but none of us remember seeing them. And that's when the tank went in. But from the annexation guide, I'd like to read something. The basic arguments for annexation are that residents receive the benefits of a higher level of municipal service and that development is subject to municipal building codes, subdivision requirements, and zoning ordinances. Additionally, the residents of the annexed area are permitted a voice in community affairs that affect them, which is why we're here. And then also from that same guide, it says, the densities and uses can be no greater than what they were when they entered the city. That apparently has changed. I mean, can we all change our zoning? You know, everybody in that area, can we all change our zoning? Because they did. From 8.85 acres, they're now 2 acres short because the city owns those 2 acres. The 2 acres that the city owns is zoned rural estate 2 acre, and that's what it is. So rural estate RE2 is low density residential that is rural or agricultural in nature. And RE2 district provides specific standards for rural residential dwellings and appropriate accessory uses. District standards are designed to preserve extensive open space and maintain the rural residential character of the area. I believe you were here at that time, Mr. Scavaro. And then the single family, which is part of this map here, which was annexed in 2003, it says, district standards are designed to maintain an open, spacious quality with significant distance between residential uses. Is that right? Reasonable maximums for lot coverage allow the preservation of scenic views, open space, and native vegetation. So maybe we could be thinking a little bit about how Prescott looks, how we want it to look. Look at all those towers and things all over town. Look at that big monster thing across the street from here, right next to the post office. I mean, is that what we want? I mean, everybody's hometown does not look like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, everybody.
Hello?
Hi. My name is Sandy Swan. I live on 1173 West Timber Ridge Road, just off Copper Basin, maybe a half mile from this site. And I want to speak in favor of it. For years, I have put up with AT&T poor service. And believe it or not, 2 weeks ago, I finally decided I'm going to switch to Verizon because I hear that they're a lot better. Well, you know, when you switch companies, they make you buy a new phone, which is one problem. And then anyway, I get my phone home and I try, and Verizon is even worse than AT&T. So I talked to the guy at Verizon, and he showed me how to connect to the Wi-Fi in my house. So in other words, now I will get incoming calls when I didn't used to with AT&T. However, when I try to make an outgoing call, 95% of the places I call have this recording that says, we do not accept calls from Wi-Fi. Did you know that that existed? I didn't. So anyway, I have to go in the den then and unplug the Wi-Fi, make my call, and plug it back in again. And this is the only phone I have. I got rid of my landline a long time ago. So I am stuck, and I can't wait for that Verizon tower to go up. Okay?
You mean you can't go out, stand in your driveway, put one on one leg, and put your arm up?
You know, that might work. I haven't tried it. You know what I'm worried about? I haven't tried calling 911. I hope they don't have this requirement that you can't be on Wi-Fi, because
ma'am, thanks
that would
a
be a
lot.
problem.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Jim Delosier. I'm a resident at 1355 Wickwood.
You know, you look like the guy that says, "Can you hear me now?"
When I meet him, I'll let him know. Wickwood is not a road. It is an easement to start off with. I can't even have a sign that says Wickwood Lane. We had to make our own because it can't come out of taxpayer funds because it isn't a road. It's an easement that goes to my home. And I frown upon all the trucks that have been going up and down there. I'm sure you guys want to come and see the site. Well, what you're doing is you're driving back and forth on my little tiny road to go see it. Thank you for the opportunity to address you in regards to the use permit intended for Wickwood Lane. We are very strongly opposed to this. And we'll do everything in our power to exhaust every resource to stop it. We very intentionally moved to the forest, so we would be away from traffic and noise. We chose our home because it was on a quiet dirt drive with no through traffic. It's not a dirt drive anymore, by the way. No smart meter and no cell towers. As such, we believed that this dream home was perfect for us. The proposed permit for a cell tower shatters that dream. We are in the closest home to the proposed site, and the value of our home would be significantly decreased as evidenced by the mounds of compiled data available. And while the FCC, F meaning the first word in FCC is the F word, in case you didn't know, federal. While the FCC doesn't allow for our discussion of health as a legitimate concern, my wife is RF sensitive, and we will be directly and potentially catastrophically impacted by this. The first study I looked at shows the overwhelming majority of respondents, 94%, reported that cell towers and antennas in a neighborhood or on a building would impact interest in a property and the price they would be willing to pay for it. And 79% said under no circumstances would they ever purchase or rent a property within a few blocks of a cell tower or antenna. Next, there's also strong evidence to conclude that cell sites are risk factors for certain types of cancer, heart disease, neurological symptoms, and other effects. Again, anything that makes your neighborhood or house less attractive upon resale, whether true, scientific, or just preference, should be considered. It is true that evidence for radiation in small amounts from cell towers or some power lines may not be conclusive. However, if buyers avoid these houses, the economic impact is the same to the seller. And another study shows putting cell towers near residential properties is just bad business. For residential owners, it means decreased property values. For local businesses, realtors, brokers, etc., representing and listing these properties, it will create decreased income. For county governments, it results in decreased revenue from property taxes. For state or local school boards, it results in the abandonment of schools and distrust of elected officials. Finally, effect of proximity to cell towers is similar to that caused by proximity to high voltage power lines and reduces price by around 21%. Taking actual distance into account using GIS analysis, the effect is a reduction price of 15% on average, but up to 25% depending upon the neighborhood. We certainly do not want to cause trouble and would prefer to avoid the fight, but make no mistake, a fight it will be if our local government allows us to move forward. We want to live peacefully in our dream home and not be forced to endure the additional vehicles, noise pollution, and the electromagnetic field known to cause disease. We would not be able to continue to live in our home, but may have trouble selling it if you allow this to continue. My wife and I will literally have to move if you do this. And I just bought this home thinking that I was going to retire there and live there for the rest of my life. My life literally hangs in the balance and is hinged on your decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank you for all your hard work that you did in tightening up the regulations on our group rehab homes. The community just wants to thank you very much. My name is Catherine Rusing. I live at 1904 Young Place in Los Pinos off of Copper Basin Road in Angelita. We built our home there in 1989. Excuse me, I'm not a very good public speaker. And we designed it especially to take in the forest views looking south. And this tower will be in our view shed. First of all, I would like to speak to this gentleman here. I was appalled that he would have the audacity to bring up something from the FCC, 1966. The technology has changed. And also, I'm a downwinder, and a lot of us in this room are downwinders. We were showered with radioactive nuclear fallout taking place in the 1960s from the Nevada open-air nuclear test sites. And for him to say, quote, a government agency saying something is safe when at the same time we were being showered with radioactive fallout telling us it was safe, and now we're downwinders, and if we get cancer and die, we get reimbursed $50,000 from the Downwinder Trust Fund. So I would like to maybe talk to you after the meeting and maybe educate you as to what a downwinder is and what we've had to endure thanks to the federal government keeping an eye out for us.
Okay, ma'am, please stay on point here.
Okay, thank you. How does your little projector work here? I'd like to put this up. Would you like to zoom in a bit? Yeah. Well, let's just see. Just maybe just show the whole thing. Thank you. First of all, I contacted the U.S. Forest Service, which is the largest property owner in the immediate area. I spoke with Sheila Sandusky, who is the person in charge of all utility, non-recreational use related uses. Her concerns were, number one, random towers out by themselves in the woods. They prefer them to be clustered and gave Mount Francis as an example. The pilots of slurry bombers and choppers with the Bambi buckets are briefed as to tower locations. And if anyone remembers the Indian fire, we had slurry bombers flying low over us. There's been spot fires in the area where we've had Bambi buckets, the choppers with the buckets dangling close to the area. And she felt that having isolated towers randomly out in the woods was going to be a hazard to the firefighting activities of our pilots. Number two, she felt that the FAA should be notified and that they would require a beacon on the top of this thing. Apparently, nobody's taken the time to notify the FAA about this. But thirdly, and most interestingly, she's a very smart lady. She commented on the public notice. She noticed that there was a cell tower application for the industrial transitional zone and also one for in a residential zone, and asked, how could that be? So I printed out all 297 pages of our zoning ordinance. And as you can see, there's a zoning district hierarchy, most restrictive to least restrictive. And the two top of the heaps are the RE2 and the SF35s, which is where we want to put the cell tower. And you'll notice at the bottom of the heap is the industrial transition zone. And according to what we're trying to do today, this is totally meaningless. It makes absolutely no sense to have this hierarchy. My second comment here is this is all the lists. This lists all 21 uses here, as you can see at the top, residential, non-residential, and then down at the bottom, telecommunication facilities. You'll see at the top, every single zoning for residential allows a telecommunication facility. All you have to do is come down to the city and get a permit. Now, pretty much that makes no sense. How can you have any residential zoning anywhere that allows a cell tower in your backyard? I'm on SF 18, and if I came to the city, took out an application, had a hearing, I mean, theoretically, I could put a cell tower in my backyard. And also, we can have major utilities, minor utilities, and also, I guess, utility installation and services, which would include the water tank. So I would like to request that the city and the staff go back, and to keep these things from happening over and over again, please amend the zoning code to reflect the definition of residential. I mean, there is, according to this code, every residential neighborhood is nothing but a big industrial park.
And that's, we can't get into, you're getting way offline here. You can have, that's the reason for having a special use permit and going through all the hearings and going through all the public hearings.
Thank
in
you.
order to air out going into anywhere we can, but you can't foresee where the best locations would be for telecommunications. There's no way to limit it.
Thank you. I'd also like to present this part of the zoning ordinance. There's 7 pages in the ordinance regulating, discussing telecommunication facilities, and you'll look at the first 4. Protecting residential areas and land uses from potential adverse impacts of towers and antennas, that's applicable. Encouraging the location of wireless facilities in non-residential areas, hopefully that's applicable. Minimizing the total number and encouraging the joint use of new and existing tower sites rather than the construction of single-use towers.
And we went over those at the beginning of this discussion, all 4 of those. And
Thank
even
you.
Specifically, we talked about.
Yeah. I'd also like to discuss the lease between the city and Verizon. Has anyone, am I allowed to talk about that?
Well, it's
lease?
something we do not get into.
Well,
we're
I
here
think
for
we
land
should.
use. No, I mean, those are specifics, legal specifics.
Because it's a lease. It's a land use lease.
That's true, but it's a legal specific. We do not get into those.
But I think it's important. May I make a few points? Would you like to?
Well, we're not
hear?
real estate experts here. We're
Well, it's
dealing,
not real estate. It's contract law. It's a legal
well,
document.
then that's even farther out of our purview. That's why we have the attorney here, but he'll tell you the same thing.
Go ahead. Mr. Rusing, we're here to look at the site and see if we think it's a good site for the purpose and if it warrants a special use permit for the height. A lot of the comments you're addressing, well, you'll have an opportunity because the city council can address some of the issues you're talking about. We're not here to look at, we don't have the lease. We don't know what the lease is, and that's not part of our knowledge or our purview. You have a councilwoman here who you can deal with on that when and if this gets recommended by us. We don't make decisions, we just recommend to the city council.
Well, as I understand how it works, the mayor and the city council appoints you guys, right? You're all appointed, and since you're appointed, they expect you to do all the footwork. They're not going to micromanage you, and from what I can tell, your recommendations are pretty much rubber stamped on the consent agenda most of the times, right?
Well, that's not necessarily true.
That's not necessarily.
But it's the city council's going to say, we appointed these guys, they're nice guys, let them do their job, and if they make a recommendation, we'll just go
We're
with it.
basically set up to handle the real estate and whether or not the appropriate use, does it follow the general plan. And then we make a recommendation. All of these points have been taken into consideration. And as far as the real estate is concerned, that doesn't include water, it doesn't include federal guidelines. We're restricted, Tom and I said for a number of years, rewriting the development code by some of the articles that came down from the federal government with the Land Use Act of 1998, the Aid to Disabilities Act of whatever time Congress passed that, and we've lost a number of opportunities to control our own destiny because we have Mr. Petracchi tell us we're violating federal law. So we look at the real estate aspect of it only and make a recommendation as purely as possible pertaining to real estate law.
And it doesn't mean your points aren't well taken.
Yes.
They're just not something it's not in our purview to deal with.
I think we know exactly where you're coming from, ma'am.
And it's frustrating, and it's frustrating to us because we run into this in a number of different instances, whether it's the houses that were just recently, the state finally gave us some authority to do things on, where we run into this conflict between federal law, state law, and a chartered city of Prescott, saying, hey guys, we're smart enough to run our own things. We don't need you coming in and tell us what to do. But unfortunately, they do.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Maybe I'll put my comments in a letter to you, and hopefully they'll be read. But
I think a letter to Congress would help. So.
Yeah.
Well, in closing...
Well, we know where you're coming from, and I really want to give other people the opportunity to speak. So if you could kind of make it short.
I wish it was as simple to say, yes, we don't like these particular provisions either.
Okay, in closing, at the last meeting, one of the Wickwood property owners said, I wish we were never annexed by the city, and he looked so sad. Please do your fiduciary duty to the Copper Basin property owners and deny this cell tower. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Hi, my name is Leslie Schuler, and I live at 2313 West Mountain Laurel Road. Never met. I live on Upper Mountain Laurel Road, and she probably lives on Lower Mountain Road.
Okay.
As we know, our beautiful town of Prescott is one with a varied topography, and I'm sure a challenge to Verizon to try and give us the service they think that we need. So what I'd like to address is, first of all, I appreciate all of you being here. Thank you. Thank you for listening to us. I'm not that savvy, but what you did put up on the board earlier is where you talked about protecting the residential areas from potential adverse impacts of towers and antennas. And we're all trying to figure out what does that really mean. I'd like to substitute the word residential area for protect your family, your friends, your neighbors here in Prescott from the potential adverse impacts of towers, since we don't truly know what they all are. Now, what I'd like to show you here is, because I live on Upper Rancho Vista, I can show you right here that, does this work? Okay. This is Copper Basin Road. Here's your proposed site. Okay. These are Copper Basin residents. These are all Rancho Vista residents. And we all live, I can show you this a little bit like that. As you can see, here's Rancho Vista Hills. You've got lower, where I assume my neighbor that I've never met lives, where her reception is not as good. And then you have going up the hill to an elevation of 6,000 feet or higher, many, many homes. You can go up there and drive the road and see how many of us live up there. We don't live on 2-acre parcels. We live on less than an acre, many of us. This proposed tower at 85 feet has panels that are absolutely in our view shed. If you go up and down the street and visit people's homes, go up on their decks and their patios, you will see the top of the water tank, actually. You'll see probably the top quarter to a third of the water tank. It's nice and green and shiny, and we don't mind looking at it. It's a source of water, and it's important to our community. These 50-foot trees you were talking about, Reg, well, we are seeing all the crowns and tops of the trees. We look over the trees. So since we have such a great view of the water tower, we're going to have a very good view of your cell tower if it were to go in. That will definitely clearly have an adverse impact on our life quality in terms of our view. Also, resale for our homes, as people, you know, whether you consider there's a health hazard or not, there's perceived health hazards. And people look at houses and they go, well, yeah, nice view there, but oh, what is that? That's that's a cell tower. It may be looking like a stealth tree, but it's still a cell tower, and people have a feeling about that. And as you said, we have a community here, right, that you tend to try to pick places where you don't have too many homes, right, that less people are impacted. Well, I'm here to tell you, I live in a part of town that a lot of people be impacted. Now, how many of you have a cell phone in this room? How many people have a cell phone? How many people have their phone on their body right now? Probably most of us. It's in our pockets, right? It's a good, useful tool, no doubt. However, if you look under general guidelines, regulatory, under your settings, you will find that it says there, in order to reduce RF exposure, put your phone on speaker when you talk. Don't have it up against your ear. Keep it at least 5 centimeters or millimeters from your body, which is 2 inches. If you're going to carry it on you, put it on airplane mode. Now, I appreciate what our attorney said, that yes, we have to look at the 1996 guidelines that the FCC proposed, but you know, we're all human beings. We know there's been changes. There's a lot of fear out there. We're not sure. We have phones telling us, keep it away from your body. Why am I to think that that tower that you're proposing isn't going to have an effect on my home, my bedroom window, and my neighbors? Okay, so I can talk aesthetics, property value, that's a definite. And finally, in conclusion, I just want to say that, you know, when the first woman opened up, this is Prescott. It's not Phoenix. I appreciate your map. And I remember as a young woman, can you hear me now, right? And you get this map and you put it up there, and there's red and there's green and there's blue, and everybody's got to have really awesome reception. I've driven all over town. We're up to 5 bars everywhere. Why is it not okay to have 3 bars in a home or 4 bars? Some reason, and with the topography that we have, you're going to have people that, like this woman here, that maybe she's only got 2 bars and she's not getting.
Okay, ma'am.
So you need to come on up.
We're over here.
Yeah. So anyhow,
I think we got the idea.
You got my idea. I just want us to try and keep Prescott what it is, and I want you to hear there's another part of the community out there on the western side of town that's being affected, and quite a few homes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your.
Ma'am, how's your cell service at your house?
Oh, gosh, I have like 4 bars. So that's why it's so weird. You can come up to my house. So everybody on the upper part, of course, has great service. And when that new tower comes online, I bet we'll have even better. That will help.
Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Sabrina Morganelli, and I live at 2125 Bonner Lane. If you could put the vicinity map up, I'll just point out where I live. I see the water tower from my home. I'm the yellow right below the R in RE 2 acre. That's my house, the yellow spot below the R. And I can see the water tower from my house. I'm going to be brief. I only have 2 questions that I hope that you would consider and press Verizon on. Vice Chairman, you brought up the height pertaining to the tank. I've had my roof replaced because of wind damage. The insurance adjuster was on my roof and nearly got blown off. We get serious winds up there, and I don't want to be the first place in the world where a Verizon tower falls and hits the water tank and causes a catastrophe. My second question is to Verizon. Is there any chance that they could improve the Mount Francis Tower so we wouldn't need to do this? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Janet Conrad, and my husband and I actually own 2 properties. And if you look at the map there, the larger one there is actually on Copper Basin, 2535 West Copper Basin. That is our main residence. We purchased that property at a premium about 15 years ago. We've lived here 13, relocated our family, started a business here in Prescott. About 2.5 years ago, we decided we love this area. We love the ponderosa pines, the quiet birds, deer, javelina, everything that come through our backyard. So our kids are interested someday. They're in college now, but interested in maybe coming back and relocating. So we bought this Wickwood Lane. If you've been up there, it's a little cabin right now. So it's actually an investment property right now, but, you know, with potential future plans of that being our residence, you know, building something there, and maybe one of our kids will buy it. So it's kind of a long-term plan that we've had. So that's 1350 Wickwood, so we own both of those. If you notice from the map as well, the tower that's on there right now, the water tower, if you see on the Wickwood Lane there, there's a portion of our property that is easement. And then the corner of our main residence there, you can see there's also a little portion there that we had sold to the city when they put in the water tank. So obviously my husband and I have a lot of interest in this. We've come to Prescott to retire. We bought our lots basically both at a premium because not only is it acreage in the pines, but you're also in the comforts of the city of Prescott. You have water services. We now have water hookup at both of those lots, as well as all the services that Prescott has to offer. So not only is it just an acre in the pines, but it's an acre in the city of Prescott Pines, which is the realtors that we've spoken to have said that this is a premium area, and that's why we're all there. Anyway, as I don't want to regurgitate what everybody else is saying. I think there's enough studies out there. We have no doubt that we will have a huge financial loss if this tower goes in at this site. And maybe for the next meeting, I'll bring some actual photos, or I'd love for you to come by my house and see exactly what you will be seeing from both of my properties. My main residence there, on the other maps that have been provided, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see my back porches heading right towards the tank. So we look at the tank, and actually it's actually not that bad. You know, the way they've designed it, the color of it, the way it's angled kind of gives some, I don't know, some offshoots to the layout. But I guarantee that we're going to see the construction of the site. Just the generator box alone, if you look at the map, is 7 feet high, and it's right in that clearing from my back patio, and then we're going to see the stealth tower going up from there. The little cabin, it's kind of hard to see on there on the Wickwood Lane property, but same thing, right off the deck. right through the clearing is right exactly where that tower is going to be. So it's very close to us. A map that's just a parcel map doesn't really show kind of this area. It's not just a flat map, but there's a lot of hills and valleys. So some of the trees, even if they're 50 feet tall, actually, if they're down inside a valley, are maybe more like 30 feet tall. So it's not just a straight across, all the trees are 60 feet. So anyway, back to the financial loss. A lot of these studies are saying that it can be up to 25% loss. We had a realtor actually do some comps on both of our homes for the price that they might sell right now. Could be up to $175,000 loss for both the properties. And, if I understand Proposition 207, there is some protection for us that it reads that the property owner is entitled to just compensation if the value of a person's property is reduced by the enactment of a land use law. So I might have some protection there in order to recomp that financial stuff. However, I'd rather just not. I'd rather just not see the tower up and be able to live in this environment that we've thought we had. Now, I know we were part of, we owned the main residence. We did work with the city. So my husband and I did sign off on an easement right for that corner. We didn't own the other property at the time. But the whole intent, and I will speak for us, and I'm guessing the other neighbors would feel the same way, the intent was to help public utilities. And so, in fact, I have my public utility easement for both properties, and it basically states that the easement right on Wickwood, and then that big chunk that's out of the Wickwood lane and the little corner on my lot, is for its employees, agents, designees, the right of ingress and egress over and through the property for public ingress and egress, public utility purposes, and other public purposes. So our intent in signing that was not to have a money-making entity come in, make money while we're losing money, but to provide services like water that everybody needs. So we took the risk of saying we'll have this million-gallon water tank in our backyard because it's quiet, it fits the environment, it helps a lot of folks with water that they need. It was not for the intent of providing other kinds of noises, other kinds of activity. You're welcome to come to my house at any time, sit on my back porch. In fact, there was a white car up there this morning I was about to pull out. We hear every car that goes down there. It's kind of like a little bowl. And so when somebody's over at that property or somebody's across the street, it just kind of echoes in there. So I know one of the, in your special use permit, one of the articles talks about external impacts being minimized. And in it, it says the proposed use shall not have negative impact on existing uses in the area and in the city through the creation of noise, glare, fumes, fire hazard, and there's some other things there. I guarantee we'll hear that in that valley. If you've ever been camping or lived on a lake, often you can hear a clear conversation from somebody across from the lake. That is exactly what it's like in this little bowl. In fact, Sabrina is a neighbor. She's actually 2 or 3 streets up, and we actually can hear each other because of the way the sound travels through that little valley. It's not...
Okay, ma'am, I imagine you're probably the most impacted by this thing because you're looking right at it, right?
Yep.
So, but I think we understand
Okay.
what you're saying.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, we hear you.
Yeah, sounds good.
That's what this meeting's about.
Okay. And could I just bring up one other thing is about safety, and I know it's kind of been hit on a little bit. I am concerned about the, obviously on the east side, there's that 40-foot, that's somebody else's property. You can see it on there how close it's going to be. But also the impact if that tower were to fall to the south and hit the water tank. I know, Ken, you had mentioned that. Where that water would go would be right between my 2 properties there. That's kind of the ditch where that water would go. So if that tank busted, cracked, whatever, there'd be 1 million gallons of water going right between my 2 properties, possibly causing damage to that as well.
Okay.
We would all suffer if that happened.
Yeah, probably everybody, that's true. So
all right.
Anyway, thank you for your time.
We appreciate it.
And thank you.
Can I get a raise of hands, see who else wants to speak on this matter? Because I was going to take a little break here. You're the last one?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Hi. You've heard a lot. My name's Brian Murphy. I live just above that tank. That's the view out my window, that tank.
Okay.
And that tank was put in, supposedly we're going to have a water district at that time, and you've heard all that. And I'm sure you're aware of it. I never did get water. Everybody around me has water except me. They're all in the city, the county, but that's another story. But I do look right at that tank. I'm here to update you on the petition, which I'm sure you had a copy of that I gave, I think, a week ago. That's been updated. I think our numbers now are 54 total Prescott people are supporting not having the tower. 46 of those are within the 500 meters of that tower. And put that up there. We'll give you an updated map. I also gave you
How many are in within 500 meters?
46 right now. Within a mile, there's 7 others that have signed the petition and 1 or 2 others. So
Okay.
we're at 54 to 63 total on that.
Okay.
You probably, I don't know what form you got this on the 3D rendering of the area. If you did at all, it was in one of your packages, if any of you read it. This is a unique area because it's a bowl. And in that bowl, there's homes, my home's 245 meters. It'll be in direct line of sight of those panels. The United States Code on RF frequency, the safe zone is 2 to 10 watts meter squared. Okay? That means basically I'm on the edge of that safety zone for the United States. 8 other countries will not even let you get near that number. Just so you know, New Zealand will let you within 500 meters of that. There are 16 homes in that area that are affected direct line of sight.
I think you mentioned Switzerland also.
Switzerland.
And one other
There's
country.
quite a few. Italy, I mean, you can
Yeah,
go down the
right.
line. That was on an initial look at what other countries are doing on this side. So you have read it. That sounds good. I appreciate that. So basically, that's the new map. And not many people are really in favor of that. They've all signed it. You now have the petition. I can give you a new version of it, of all the new people. And ongoing, we'll keep updating that for the next.
Well, that's pretty graphic as it is.
Yeah, I thought it would work. So, anyway, if you have any questions on any of the things that I sent you on the documents on the, it sounds like you had read it.
No, I think just the number of people on that signing up on that petition is pretty impressive. So I think
Yeah,
that
now we
kinda-
didn't have a lot of time on that. I think I was in 5
I think
days. We signed
that
many
was the
up.
most impressive thing
All right.
that we received.
I appreciate it, and I'm in opposition.
Okay.
And we'll see you on the next meeting.
Okay, appreciate it. Yeah, this was, as you all know, we are not voting on anything today, doing any kind of recommendation to the city council. This is strictly a hearing, and it'll actually continue, what date?
November 10th is your next meeting
November
date?
10th is next meeting,
that
and we
is
will
also, that's advertised as the public
keep
hearing.
talking
and your
about it
action
and
date.
probably make some kind of a decision at that time. Okay, I'm going to take about a 10-minute break here, everybody. So then we'll come back and we'll talk about the other cell tower. But I think we're pretty much done with this one for today. Thank you.
Beat it to death, didn't we? That time? Beat it to death.
I'm good.
No, we're all good. It was well put.
Okay, everybody, back to your seats. We're going to be going here. He has a doctor's wife.
Find out where you are. That's right.
I've gone to John Tree.
It doesn't bother us. If it was the government, it'd bother us. If it was Google, I don't care.
I'll float out the door.
There's a great one about that, about this in the Wall Street Journal a few years ago. Anyway, they track all your preferences, know what you buy, everything. And how they can even tell if somebody is pregnant, if you're preferences change often, you get sensitive to the smell. So the guy gets a litter, the 17-year-old daughter.
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, everybody, let's get going again. We're on regular action item 3. Another special use permit request for another cell tower, Commerce Center Circle. Before we start, I'd like to welcome Councilwoman Orr. I missed you over there earlier.
She's hiding.
Yeah. Okay, George.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is also a request for installation of a Verizon cell tower. This is a location that you're very familiar with. A little over a year ago, the process was conducted through Planning Commission review to get an SUP for a location that I've identified here as last proposed site. That location ultimately would have required a height variance or height waiver by the City Council and a setback waiver by the City Council. And ultimately, when it went through that process, after you moved it on to them, the City Council denied the location for potential adverse impacts on the adjacent properties, primarily due to those setback concerns.
From the school.
From the school,
yeah.
And to the east, there are commercial buildings. There's an engineering firm immediately next door, and then another commercial business within that same what would have been considered a fall distance setback.
Okay.
Verizon re-looked at the site and made contact with adjacent property owners, and is back before the city with a request for a special use permit for a different location, about 385 feet north of the previous location. They're looking at a site that's adjacent to the Courier's Building's parking lot, rear parking lot, and that's identified as current proposed site on this map. That site is actually within the required fall distance setback, the 1-to-1 setback requirement. If the closest property line being the one to the east, the setback distance is 70 feet, they're requesting a 70-foot tower. So in this case, they're actually meeting the setback requirements. They are, again, going to have to ask for, and have asked for as part of the SUP, a height waiver by City Council ultimately to allow the tower height that's necessary for this site. A little bit zoomed in view of the site plan to give you a better view of it. This location is just south in a sort of graveled landscaped area south of the dumpster location. So if you've driven out to the site, the dumpster location is a good point to look for. And then again, a little further south and slightly west of that would be the location of the compound. Their proposal this time around is similar to the previous one in that it's a walled compound rather than simply a wire fence. It will obscure vision of the equipment on the ground. Will probably assist with any noise associated with backup generators. These sites generally have a backup generator. I'm sure the Verizon representative will mention that as part of his discussion with you. The location is not proposed for a stealth antenna location. This site is in the middle of a developed park. They are proposing a typical monopole with antenna arrays at the top. This is a little bit different than the previous site we looked at where there's a potential for blending in with the background or with adjacent trees. None of that exists on this site. This is a standard proposal. One of the issues that could come up during review by you as part of your recommendation process or at City Council is discussion of paint colors, paint schemes for the tower. Certain paints will make the tower much less visible. They'll blend in better with backgrounds than others. I know there have been some recommendations and discussion of that between nearby property owners and Verizon. So again, that may be an issue you want to make a particular requirement of a recommendation if you recommend approval. And as with the previous, they provided us with a photo rendering of what they believe it would look like in comparison with the adjacent properties and with the existing conditions. It would certainly be visible. It's significantly taller than the existing structure on the site. It is more in compliance with all of the other criteria that we typically look at than the previous location that was ultimately denied by council. There are quite a number of people who provided us written comments, both for and against the location of the tower here. Those are included in your packet. We had a few come in after the packets were provided to you, and those were given to you today in front of your seat as an adjunct to those that you'd already received. With that, review criteria is exactly the same. Land Development Code process is exactly the same.
Right.
Your criteria, your list of things to find and make recommendations associated with remains the same at this site as it did with the other. We do have a representative for Verizon here, and I will turn it over to him if you have no questions.
Clarifying.
Yes, sir.
The original packet we got 2 weeks ago indicated it was 67 feet from the road. Has that been moved to 70 now?
It was an incorrect measurement on my part.
Okay.
It is 70 feet. Survey distance was 70 feet. I did a measurement using our GIS system, and that was incorrect.
Would the staff broker, you're going to select a color for this thing to make it disappear? Would the staff be in the middle of brokering that?
We can work with Verizon to come up with a recommendation.
Okay.
Ultimately, it won't become invisible. It will become less visible at best.
Okay. Mr. Verizon, is there anything we can really add to it that we haven't heard?
A few things.
Okay. All right.
Ought to be easy on this one, Red.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. As far as this site goes, really, I don't think there's any question as to the need. We've been here before. We got denied by council on the neighboring property. We've moved to this one to avoid any issues with the setback. The pole itself, what we have proposed, we had a neighborhood meeting back in March and then another one, I believe, in June, and actually tried to do a balloon flight at the second one, which worked for about 8 seconds before the wind knocked it back down. What was discussed at those meetings, though, was actually the type of structure and the color. So what we're actually proposing right now is a rusticated steel, so just a rusted steel pole, similar to what a lot of the APS power poles look like. In fact, the nearest APS power poles along Willow Lakes Road are this exact kind of rusted steel. And this is something that is becoming more and more popular. It's low maintenance, so unlike if you paint it brown in 5 years, you may need to paint it again. But these will have an appearance that stays the same over time. And then the antennas and equipment would all be painted brown as well. This is something that's becoming more popular.
That's Core 10 steel?
Yes, Core 10 steel. So, like I said, I don't think there's necessarily a huge question of the need here that was kind of demonstrated last time. The history on this thing is pretty clear. It was denied based on not meeting that setback. We've gotten rid of that issue. We still have a need in this area, especially along Smoke Tree Lane. I do have coverage maps I'll show very quickly. These are a little bit bigger than the last ones, but what we're looking at here is, let's zoom in again. So these are the existing sites. This is a city water facility up on the hill. This is a site over on Commerce Drive, and this is a site at the city facility along 89. This is our proposed location now, and the areas that are white are getting poor or no coverage currently, and I think you will probably have people coming up here to attest to exactly that issue very shortly. I know they talked to me about it. Here is the coverage map then once the site goes on. So this is now our site, and a lot of the area along Smoke Tree and in the residential area for Prescott Lakes is now covered. This gray area is the primary coverage that this part of the site offers. This green area is the primary part that this part of the site covers. And then it actually also helps get up through the dells as well. But the primary goals are these areas here because there are a lot of customers, and many of them are to the point of doing yoga outside their house because they're trying to get one bar of coverage to make a call. So this is a coverage site. I mean, there's definitely capacity needs in the area, but primarily this is a coverage site. As far as that design, like I said, it's core 10. Some other mitigating things we're looking at doing. For that generator, it needs to cycle about once a month. So what we'd look to do is limit that to between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. We would likely do that on the previous site as well. But that's something to do just to, so when that noise occurs, it occurs during regular business hours. And
how long does it run?
It usually runs for about 30 minutes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Are there any full-time fan noises or anything like that?
The equipment cabinets do have fans on them, but the site would stay within the noise requirements for the ordinance as is.
Okay.
So yeah, we feel that given the last site did not work, this is the best spot for co-location or for a site in this area. And I know there was a question last time in front of the commission of making it co-locatable or not. The structure is capable physically of handling additional carriers in the future if need be. There's been some feedback from the neighborhood that they might want it to require a permit to do that, even though the code would allow co-location. But structurally, it would be sound to handle additional carriers. So that's really all I have, just because I know there are a lot of folks that want to speak, and I don't know if you have any questions.
Now, with a co-carrier, you wouldn't be changing, you wouldn't be adding height later,
no.
Would you? Okay. All right, thanks a lot. Any questions? No? Okay, let's open it up to the public. Anybody here would like to speak to the cell tower here?
My name is Ron Young. I live at 1667 Constable. Been here about a year. I'd like to ask the attorney, and his opening remarks, he mentioned something to the effect that the FCC requirement is for, I'll paraphrase, fast action. I've found out from some of the neighbors that this has been going on for 4 years. It's not what I consider fast, especially when you don't have service in the area. And also, I'd like to suggest maybe asking the attorney, what happens if somebody dies because they haven't been able to reach 911 or something? Does the city want to be named in a lawsuit for that? You know, it's crazy. We have a range extender at our house. It doesn't do a whole lot of good, but it did cost a significant amount of money. And when I called Verizon, I talked to them 4 times before I found out they were going to charge me for that. And I said, wait a minute, you're going to charge me for your poor service? That seems kind of backwards to me. That's probably more politely than I said it to them. But it happens that Constable is a street that has poor reception. And I think this has drug on far longer than it needs to. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak to this issue?
I do.
Good.
My name is Don Kuchar. I live at 1695 Constable Street. And I don't care if other people don't have service as long as I have service. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. It came out backwards. I don't believe when I moved here, I was moving into an Amish community. I thought Prescott was modern and normal, and we advance technology as technology changes. We can't live in the past. We don't live in an Amish community. We have to accept things as they happen, as technology changes. I know the gentleman with the green shirt earlier made a very impassioned plea about his poor wife. Guess what's on his hip? A cell phone. So he uses a cell phone. He doesn't turn off his cell phone at home, probably not. The issue in my mind is safety. Safety. We need coverage for accidents in area. We need coverage for people that might get sick and need to get in touch with emergency services, such as 911 or hospital care. We need those kinds of services in our community, which we don't have in certain areas, in our area specifically. Another very important factor is home alarm systems. If I were a crook, the first thing I would do would go in and cut the landline or the phone line before I would rob the house, but I'm not a crook. Most modern systems for security use cell phones and bypass the risk of having the perpetrator cut the cell phones. The safe systems that are installed now as home security use cell phones. And if you don't have cell phone coverage, you don't have safety. So that's my concerns.
Can I interrupt you a second,
Sure.
answer? All right. This body considered this, as you said, a long time, some 4 years. The points that caused it to get turned down after we approved it in P&Z some years ago was not the items that you're bringing up. It was the setback from two adjacent property owners, the school and the other. So it was the setback that caused the council to turn it down.
Fine,
and now
sir.
we're back with a different location that is not a problem with the setback. And I think that what we're looking at is this location what we would like to do? And the answer, I think, of most of us is yes. They've corrected the setback problem, and that solved the problem that we had the last time we reviewed this and did give it approval when we forwarded it up to the council.
Okay,
So-
I accept that, and as long as
That's a little
we
history.
continue in that vein, if that's the only problem, the setback, I'm all for it.
And I
Thank
think
you, sir.
Mr. Verizon sitting there knows that this was going to be a lot easier than the one that was up on Copper Basin.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak?
Good morning. Dana McCready, 1691. I think it's still morning, yeah. 1691 St. Andrews Way. I live in the cottages at Prescott Lakes, directly across the street from the proposed location. And I'm here again to voice my opposition to this application. It's news to me that the setback requirement has been met. Coming into the meeting, that was not public information. So I'm glad to hear that Verizon has complied with that requirement. However, my continuing concern about this project is its inadequate siting, resulting in possible threat to public safety. While the city attorney earlier wielded the big stick with FCC jargon, we as residents of Prescott are looking to you to enforce the LDC. And there's been a lot of discussion about that this morning, protecting the health, safety, and general welfare of our Prescott residents. The setback requirement has apparently been resolved. But let's mention for a brief moment the fall zone. If you look at the aerial map, the Courier building, I am told, is within 60 feet of the tower. So I'm asking you to consider that. At a 70-foot setback, you're still looking at the eastern side. That is a cul-de-sac. That is a sole ingress and egress to that business park. And of course, if bases were ever to be evacuated, they would most likely go into the vacant lot to the north. So I'm just asking you to consider, yes, the setback has been resolved, but let's focus on the fall zone as well because of that cul-de-sac ingress, egress, and the Courier building. The maximum building height requirement within the IT zoning is 40 feet. This proposed monopole installation is 70 feet. If you've been into the cottages, there is elevation throughout Prescott Lakes, which is probably the reason we're here. But there's been a lot of discussion in the last application about view shed, and a lot of our homeowners in Prescott Lakes also value their views of the granite dells. Approval of this application with no prudent enforcement of height requirements and consideration of fall zone sets a dangerous and worrisome precedent for future cell tower siting applications. Mr. Destry has talked about, in the previous application, being harmonious with the surrounding neighborhood. This cell tower is not harmonious with the surrounding neighborhood. Yes, it would be located in IT zoning, but if you look at the surrounding neighborhood, to the west it's residential, to the east it's residential, and there's a school to the south with 800 student enrollment. I respectfully request that you deny this application once again, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
I'm Mike Heffley. I'm 1681 Constable. I'm also here for 1669-71. Several neighbors. I have Verizon. I've been here 3 years now. They offered to let me out of my contract because they said we didn't have coverage. My wife has AT&T. Hers is even worse. Everybody on that whole side of the street, we have to go outside just to get a call. So we really would like to see this go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Just got to get AT&T to get on your tower too. Anybody else? No? Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Hi, Elise Rose with at 1690 St. Andrews Way. The last time this SUP request came before you, evidence that cell towers can and do catch fire, do collapse and fall. Do not forget, we also have thousands of lightning strikes and high wind here, was deferred to Mr. Destry by one of your members. The City Council took that evidence seriously, putting the safety of the many, including the basis school children and the protection of property values, above special interests. And the school, sorry. In addition, the Prescott fire budget has been cut, causing lower response times. There is congestion on Prescott Lakes Parkway in the morning and afternoon for the school, and heavy traffic the rest of the day. Negative impact on property values. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, categorized cell towers with hazards and nuisances, and HUD requires that certified appraisers to take the presence of nearby cell towers into consideration when determining the value of single-family residential properties. Studies have shown, as you have heard earlier from Copper Basin people, that proximity to a cell tower can lower property values on average 15 to 25%. Real estate appraisers and real estate brokers across the U.S. have rendered professional opinions that when large cell towers are installed close to residential homes, such homes suffer material losses in value. In our last go-around with this SUP, two longtime Prescott real estate professionals gave testimony that their experience corroborates that fact. A nearby cell tower decreases property value in the vicinity regardless of proof of harm. And so I would say your first three tenets of the Land Development Code are in violation or in conflict with that. Overwhelmingly, the number of residents in the area have great reception. There is no proof that a 70-foot intrusion, the 70-foot intrusion will help the small number of people on Constable affected. Residents living on Mariposa off Willow Lake Road in close proximity to the electrical towers, just like the people on Constable, have had the same issue, although close to existing cell towers. I have a question for the people on Constable. Have any of you tried Consumer Cellular? The folks on Constable chose to buy their homes very close to and next to, with views of the electrical towers. I did not. When I chose my lot and location, I wanted no views of those and wanted clear views of the Dells. A 70-foot cell tower will be smack in the middle of those views. Not to mention, this proposed site would still not meet, as Ms. McCready pointed out, that it doesn't meet the fall zone requirements. Mr. Destry advised at a September meeting that Verizon will be redirecting the array and the aim of the tower in 89 more towards Smoke Tree. Should not the outcome of that be required before you vote? The existing cell tower site by Twin Lakes Market has been dismissed by Mr. Destry, saying they would have to dig. Well, they have to dig at the Commerce Center. He says there is not sufficient room for his 210-plus gallon diesel fuel generator and shed. Has anybody verified that there is not enough room at Twin Lakes? To me, it looks like there is enough room. Of course, I'm not an expert. He did say that AT&T was amenable to co-locating with Verizon, which is one of the preferences of the LDC. So why would you need another diesel tank enclosure or the size that Mr. Destry says he would put in the Commerce Center? If you need a separate compound for each locating company, can you imagine how that would look in the Commerce Center with other companies collating, and how many more 200-plus diesel tanks and sheds there would be? Verizon would not be the big fish at Twin Lakes like they would be at the Commerce Center. Why has Mr. Destry saying that there are no other viable sites been taken for granted? An independent party has not verified his statements. It appears very much as a special interest situation for Mr. Destry, Verizon, and for the courier owner. The Commerce site is very expedient for Mr. Destry and Verizon, so they would not have to negotiate with another landowner, possibly do a lot of excavation, as they have a willing partner already. There is, for example, commercial property, open space on Prescott Lakes Parkway and 89 heading towards 69. The elevation is good there and would preclude the need for a 70-foot tower. There also is open space, commercial space adjacent to Twin Lakes Market as another example. The U.S. Department of the Interior states that electromagnetic radiation standards used by the Federal Communications Commission continue to be based on thermal heating, a criterion now 30 years out of date and inapplicable today. Many other countries, as has been mentioned, now limit public exposure almost 50 times lower than the standards currently set by the FCC. The California Public Utilities Commission, among others, has urged that cell towers not be placed near schools or hospitals. There seems to be a desire by Verizon, although stated by Mr. Destry's partner there, that they're looking at this seriously, to put towers all over Prescott with oversaturation. We know we need cell towers. All I'm asking is for that you take serious consideration of these important points, in particular, other locations more suitable than putting it close to a school and to our homes. Thank you very much.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. All we can do is look at what they are asking for. We're not engineers here. Yes, sir.
Regretfully, I'm Robert Callahan, 1440 Quanah. The other day, I got out of my car and noticed that I had a flat tire, so I grabbed my cell phone like anybody would and could not get a connection. Then it occurred to me, what if I was having a heart attack? I would just lay there and die. I don't like that idea. But looking at some of the other arguments, most of the space available at Twin Lakes is owned by the city of Prescott. It's the right-of-way for the traffic circle. So yes, it's a beautiful place to put a cell tower. They can't put it there because of the right-of-way. Yes, they can aim more stuff from the tower on 89 towards Prescott. They can't get over the hill. Blooming Hills is a beautiful wall for cell systems. Nothing goes through there. This site was chosen after many rounds, after your direction, to see if there were alternate sites available. A beautiful site is owned by Basis. They turned it down. Yes, they could put one on top of the hill at Blooming Hills in that commercial zone, but that doesn't allow the cell system to work. The cell system is each cell has a limited distance, so they can reuse their very valuable bandwidth. And if they can't reuse their bandwidth, they can't increase throughput. Yes, you can have 5 bars, but you can't make a cell phone call because too many people are making a call. There is a limit. So yes, we need this tower. Yes, it's a public safety. If there's an accident at Smoke Tree and Prescott Lakes Parkway, that's a dead spot. Yes, the tower is ugly. Yes, property values go down initially, but people are cutting cords and don't want both landline and cell phone. They want cell phone. And the property values will go down if they don't have cell phone. I lived in Florida 1 block from a cell tower, a very massive cell tower. I sold my house at 20% over the real estate recommended value in 7 days. I can't think that hurt my property values. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speak to this issue?
I'm the last one.
Okay.
I have no paperwork. I don't have 3 pages or anything. I live on 1681 Constable. My name is Rochelle Dowland. Not only do I use my cell phone for personal use, I also use it for business use. I am a realtor here in Prescott. I don't get phone calls when I'm sitting from here in the kitchen at all. I have to go out on the driveway just like many, many of my neighbors do. The other thing I don't get is my mother, who's 90 years old, is now at Granite Gates. Last Saturday, I did not receive the voicemail that I got from Granite Gates that she had fallen and she was being removed through an ambulance until I went out on Smoke Tree Road. So it's a serious business not being able to receive calls. People talk about landlines. 80% of people do not have landlines anymore. Cell phone service, cell phone use is what we need. It's not just a few neighbors in Constable, it's the whole street and around the whole neighborhood. I'm asking that you approve this. And one other question I had is, how often do cell phone towers really fall unless we're in a hurricane or tornado area? Thank you.
Point. It's a good point. I assume it's pretty rare. All right. George? Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. I didn't see your hand raised.
My name is Jeannie Anderson. I live at 1387 St. George Circle. I don't care about the aesthetics. I can't see it from my house anyway. My concern is that developers continue to come before this commission and the city council and they want variances. We have codes here. Everybody knows what they are. If you can't build within the code, then figure out a way to do that or find someplace else to build. Mr. Destry said that maybe the reason that the houses on Constable can't get reception is because of the construction of the houses. And then he said, but the only way to find out whether or not it was the construction is to build the cell tower and see if that fixes it. Hello? So if it doesn't fix it, will he take the cell tower down? They already have an existing tower on 89. They were going to move some of the array to see if they could fix the problem that way. But he said that it wouldn't be done in time for this meeting. We've been working on this for 2 years, people. You didn't think about doing that 2 years ago? So as far as I know, it still hasn't been done, and they still don't know if maybe that is working on Constable. If that happened, then they wouldn't have to put up a new cell tower. Because it is within 5 miles of the airport, does there need to be a beacon on top of this cell tower? That is a question that has not been asked or discussed at all previously. And the last thing that I want to say is that the Prescott City Code has a section called Special Use Review Criteria. Compatible with surrounding area. The proposed site plan circulation plan, and schematic architectural designs shall be harmonious with the character of the surrounding area with respect to scale, height, landscaping, and screening. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I would say that, let you know that telecommunications is a special issue with as far as being flexible in terms of height. And it always has been, so. George?
Just a reminder, your November 10th meeting is
November
the public hearing again for this
Do this
item.
again.
Action by this body could occur at that meeting should you choose to do so.
Okay.
That's it for us. Thank you, sir.
Okay, now I got public hearing for some items. Did you want to adjust those downtown? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Did you want to adjust those issues, downtown issues? And
yeah, we can take them in order.
do the green lane, or does?
Either way, we can do them in order. It's up to you, sir.
Is there any issue on the downtown stuff?
Don't know.
Okay, well, let's do it then.
Which stuff? Waiver of...
No, actually, this is
It's the density versus the...
proposed rezoning of multiple properties generally located, so this is on Goodwin Street, right? This
Yes,
is
sir.
on Goodwin Street, okay. They want to add some property along Goodwin Street to the downtown business district, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Alrighty, thank you. This is the public hearing for RZ 16003, and these next three items, you're right, Mr. Chairman, are public hearings, and action could be taken today, unlike the previous two issues.
Okay.
So the application before you started, a little bit of history on this for the public's benefit. I know it's in your staff report. We are talking about the area that is currently zoned business general just south of Goodwin Street. Everybody knows the Mile High Middle School running track and the what's commonly referred to as the Liquor Deli Plaza over here. So property to the south of the downtown business district boundary has this little T-shaped portion zoned business general. As you know, each week we have pre-application conferences for different business ideas where citizens come in and talk to staff on Thursday afternoons about proposed business ideas. Right about in between where that B and G are in business general, there was a little strip center there. It had the liquor barn in it. And the liquor barn, as you know, went out of business and relocated, or went out of business completely, I'm not sure. And somebody who owns a local restaurant here in town came to a pre-application conference hoping to relocate her restaurant in that spot. However, part of the pre-application conference is to go over zoning criteria for the applicant, and as you know, restaurants require one parking space for every 100 square feet, and in a 4,900 square foot building or whatever, even bigger than that maybe, 5,900 square feet, there just isn't enough parking. In fact, when you consider even office uses, one space per 300 square feet, there's not even enough parking for an office use. So the concern came out of, well, gosh, from the property owner who is here today, what business could I have in here to meet the parking standards and so I could not have a vacant building? Well, until you get to something close to that would allow a use at one space per 500 square feet, such as a manufacturing type use or something like that, you really can't. So the concern was this building's going to stay vacant because now it's empty. And any new business coming in would have to comply with business general rules. So one of the suggestions was that you apply for a rezoning to downtown business, which is what happened. But based on staff conversations and suggestions, the applicant reached out to other people in that T area. Again, this is the hope. This is the ultimate hope of the applicant, was initially just to have her building rezoned to downtown business district, but to have a single parcel rezoned, it's sort of like spot zoning. So staff recommended that the applicant reach out to the other property owners in the vicinity to gauge their interest. I can say with confidence that the outreach by the applicant's real estate agent, the applicant herself, and myself has been a significant effort. Multiple mailings. I hosted a community meeting, which everybody was invited to. Unfortunately, only one person took advantage of that. So, although the ultimate discussion with staff was to have the entire property that is currently zoned, all the properties that are currently zoned business general, to turn into, say, downtown business district, the outreach effort received favorable responses for participating in the rezoning, the initial rezoning application, from the properties you see in green here that front mostly on Goodwin Street and a little bit on South McCormick and Spring Street. I wanted to make a point, out of respect for those that were opposed to the application, to make this map so that you could see those that we reached out to. The ones in blue I labeled as uncommitted or undecided. They kind of went back and forth. So I didn't want to label them as opposed nor for it. The ones in green are property owners. Again, this being the initial application here, are property owners that ultimately said, yeah, this is a good idea. This could help the future of my property if it ever changes use to be part of the downtown business district. So these properties in green are the ones that are participating. And as far as I know, I've only received through word of mouth from the real estate agent representing the applicant of one in total opposition that wants to remain as business general, this little spot in red over here off of Bridge Street. So out of respect for those that were opposed and undecided, I wanted to present this publicly at this meeting.
Why don't you just eliminate the red and the blue?
We could, and that is the
why even consider them?
That is the very much a possibility, sir, is that we could ultimately, if you're in favor of recommending a zoning change for the ones in green, that could be the recommendation for only those that want to participate. And those could be rezoned if the city council ultimately approves it to downtown business district, and the ones in blue and red could stay as business general. So that is a possibility.
But we have to act on what you're showing us.
Yes, sir. You can act on, you could make a recommendation for just those in green. You could make a recommendation for the whole thing and sort it out at city council level. But I know that there are members of the public here that want to comment on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody in the public like to speak?
Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Zizi. I represent the original applicant. We own the building at 405 West Goodwin. We have for roughly 10 years. And as Frank said, we enjoyed a full house for quite a while, and Liquor Barn moved out, and we're looking to fill that space. It is almost 6,000 square feet, but you know, our options are slim. When you look at the map, we are a little island. We just want to, you know, enjoy the requirements of the properties across the street from us. We have a wonderful tenant that would like to move in, is very eager to. We just need this to take place, and we can move forward. So I appreciate your consideration and hope that you vote for it. Thank you.
So really, the only issue there is that it'll stretch the parking in that neighborhood, right? Is there any other? That's about the only basic issue.
That is the issue. This is really all about the parking and the possibility of having uses go into those sites as existing uses change or move.
And if I'm reading this right, you're taking the downtown business district as it exists today and the areas in green. And I look at it and I say it's very compatible because you're not spotting it, but it's just to the south of that particular property that it is already zoned downtown business district.
Correct. And it's all, one thing I should mention is that it's all consistent with the general plan in that this entire boundary, as I showed you on the initial aerial, this is the entire boundary highlighted in black, you can see it slightly here, is all designated as commercial in the general plan.
So it's consistent with the general plan.
Yes, it is.
Contiguous to an existing piece that is downtown business district. not to be considered as spot zoning because you're not taking one parcel and then skipping 2 parcels and
That's correct.
taking another. So it fits in with the overall general plan for the downtown business district.
This area is,
And it's up the street from the parking garage and some of the other things that are the amenities in that area.
correct. So the subject area highlighted here, everything outlined in red, and it could be a little bit darker, is the general plans map for commercial zoning, which covers both the DTB and the BG. So it is consistent with the general plan.
Okay, that's why you were looking at those other parcels.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
Frank, unlike what I'm hearing here, I'm against this particular application, but not because I don't think it shouldn't be part of downtown. I think that I'd like to find out what we meant when we started a district called the Downtown Business District, and why that's a special location only. I don't know. Is it a zoning designation or is it just a district?
It is a zoning designation.
And why is it just in this particular area?
The historic pattern of the downtown, how the boundaries were decided. Anybody have, George, do you know really just a historic pattern of downtown? I think another question related to that is why was this area excluded? And I don't understand a reason why it was less business general and not DTB.
Well, and I wouldn't argue that. I think my point is, we have another application coming here about apartments and density downtown. And we seem to keep bumping into things about downtown. I don't know. I think this should be part of a downtown issue, but I'd really prefer that we looked at what the downtown district is. A year ago, some groups came and said, well, golly, we're downtown. Let's make an entertainment district. And so we keep trying to do things downtown. And in this case, we have a property owner. I certainly understand it. I'm a building owner myself. It's not easy getting tenants. I'd like to have no parking too. It would be easier to get a tenant, maybe. Might not be easy to keep a tenant without parking, though. And I think we're at a point with so many requests coming about to the city for downtown issues. I think it's time we sat down and looked at downtown business district. You got areas just to the north of it. Probably in 4, 5, 6 months, you get some of these people that are BG and RO up here talking about the same issues. I'm a no vote on this one, not because I think the sites shouldn't be part of downtown district, but we can also take the school field there and make it part of downtown district. When and if something happens with the school, it should be part of the downtown district. I think we need to take control of this.
You mean our convention center?
Well, that's not where they're talking now.
Well, I think when you talk about the character of the downtown, I think what's across the street with the large parking lot with the strip is unique, that property enjoys a very large parking lot.
I think you're absolutely right.
Everywhere else downtown is similar to this rezoning request in that there is very little to no off-street parking.
And I agree with you. I think that was my leading question. I think that was one of the purposes of a downtown group was because there's limited parking.
Correct.
And how do we attract businesses to a community if you don't have parking? We say, well, you don't have to have parking, so let them come anyway.
Exactly.
Well, I think in this case, though, it is consistent with the overall majority of downtown is not what you see across the street in that shopping center. The overall majority of downtown is what's in the screen.
Site, although I think we have to force ourselves to do something about downtown and take a look at the whole downtown district in whole.
And I agree, but that's I'm not trying to debate with you, sir, but that's a bigger issue than this applicant's application.
You're absolutely right. And next month, you're going to get some of these other people coming to you for the same thing.
Can I interject now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. The downtown business district was created because we wanted to see development in downtown without having to have tear downs to provide parking on site for individuals who wanted to renovate their properties. We've made arrangements in the downtown business district that alternative measures are available for parking, such as paying into this fund that's been created for an additional parking garage at some time in the future when it's deemed necessary. So all of these things were designed in the Land Development Code to tie in with getting the use out of those upper levels downtown that are currently vacant by making them apartments and live-in units and not have on-site parking, to spur the development of
And
retail.
I'm familiar with the purpose of downtown.
Again, you've got a piece of property that's contiguous to some downtown business district. To me, it makes sense as a planner and developer also to say, yes, it's logical to have this particular piece expanded to the south.
And I didn't question that. I just think we need to do more than just look at this one piece, and that's my whole point.
I mean, the request is coming in here now, and the process allows for this request, and I think we need to look at it and move forward with it. I certainly agree to the preservation districts, the historical districts and the entertainment districts and all that. We need more uniformity in that, what Prescott is in this, wherever it is downtown. And that's just a bigger study, and it involves a whole lot of different things other than just zoning and those issues. But I think we ought to move forward with this request, and we've got someone with a project to move forward, economic development. Congratulations. Who is that restaurant, by the way? Yeah, because that's a big space. I'm wondering. Okay, so I'm done.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that was my concern too, is that if there was some historical justification for drawing that line down the middle of Goodwin Street, and if it was simply to identify at the time a downtown concentrated business area, to reward someone on one side of the street and diminish the value of another business on the other side of the street seems somewhat arbitrary.
It's a good point.
So I would support that too.
And the general plan is showing it as commercial, as being a part.
It is commercial.
No, I know, but it's showing it as a part of the downtown business district, isn't it?
No, it's not.
No? Okay. Oh, but it's zoned properly. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You have the honor of listening to me not once but twice today. My name is Catherine Roosing, as you know, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Roosing family. We support the expansion of the DTB. Unfortunately, the Roosings couldn't be here, but I feel that Russ is here in spirit. I have the map here, and this is Roosing Square right there. Originally, there was an old Catholic church there. It was the Hispanic church, and Russ developed a small business park there, and Bernie Fisher bought the church for $1 and moved it over to his property off Iron Spring Road. And Russ always said that Bernie never paid him the $1 that he owed to move the church. But we would like Roosing Square to be included because we feel it would improve our property values. It would allow for more flexibility in usage. It would do away with some outdated building code requirements. Finally, it is a forward-looking project which would benefit the community as a whole. And also, I would like to show that right here, it emphasizes historic and pedestrian character. So if that restaurant goes in, we have a huge parking garage where people can park and encourage the pedestrian character of people walking in the area or riding their bikes or scooters or Ubering. And I think the DTB recognizes that not everyone is going to be one person in a car anymore driving around downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jonathan Ayton, and I own the property at 450 West Goodwin, which is right at the corner of Bridge Street and West Goodwin. And obviously, I'm a proponent of the rezoning and fully supportive of Ms. Easy and Ms. Rusing's efforts. I'd hate to see another establishment, a eating facility in downtown, be diminished or not even get off on the right foot if this rezoning doesn't take place. And I guess the biggest, my biggest concern is the Commission's efforts in the last month, let's say, of supporting residential uses in the downtown Prescott area. And I was here last month, and the Commission fully supported the condominium project at 129 North Granite, in that people would be able to walk to eating establishments in the downtown area. So this project just furthers that, and it shouldn't be a parking concern.
Okay.
In my eyes, if you want to bring residential living to the downtown area. So that's my point. In addition, Mr. Maverick, if you're abstaining a non-vote, I am also in agreement with that, because I also own property on South Montezuma Street, and I'd like to see that rezoned as a DTB as well. So I think you're a proponent, so I don't understand your non-vote, because I think the entire downtown area should be afforded this opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioners, any questions of anybody? Okay, I think we can vote on this, right?
Yes, sir.
I don't see why we should be considering anybody who's opposed or non-committal to this. I think we should just go with those that are in favor of going downtown.
We agree, sir. Yeah, that would be fine with staff.
Okay. I'm open to a motion along those lines, unless you want me to make it. Anybody?
See what the motions are.
You have a staff memo in the packet.
Okay.
Now, it does not segregate out the green area.
Okay.
So you might want to add some language
I'll make the
in.
motion
Okay.
then. Yeah. Motion to approve RZ 16-003, a proposed change of land use for multiple properties generally located south and west of Goodyear Street and continuous a portion of the Bridge Street. This is for those businesses approving this rezoning and not the others that either are opposed or neutral on it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor, raise your hand. Right?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, item public. Yeah, we have a no vote. Did you get that, Darla? Okay. Spoiler. Okay, item number 2, on the public hearing agenda, proposed amendment to Article 4 of the Land Development Code to amend multifamily residential density and dimensional standards for the downtown business district.
Yes, sir. We have discussed this multiple times. I won't spend too much time on it.
Okay.
We discussed it as far as changing the residential density in the sense of not the base density, but there's other criteria that are necessary in order to get a higher density use. And a sort of a discussion item we had back in August, and I think even in September, the commission was generally, many of the commission members were generally in favor of eliminating this, but we did not have it as a public hearing. I also mentioned that there was a second discussion from one of our public meetings of why are we having the setbacks? Why not just keep it consistent with the downtown character of 0 setbacks? So you asked us to receive input from other groups. We already had in one of your original packets a letter from the Chamber of Commerce that we handed to you one meeting supporting this amendment. We have a verbal support from the Prescott Downtown Partnership, and we did receive a majority vote from the Historic Preservation Commission for supporting this change, including the setback change.
Yeah, they'd be the one I'd be concerned with the most.
They did. So one member abstained, the others voted to support it. So
okay,
we did go out and reach out to those organizations that you requested. So we're back now. This is the advertised public hearing for this. And then, unless you want me to rehash what we've talked about many times, I can, or did you just want to open it up for public comment?
I think we pretty much understand. Everybody understand what we're doing here?
Yep. I mean,
Any problems?
This would allow a zero setback or another setback, which is recommended by the architect. Is that correct? Correct, because I don't think we want to cut ourselves out of the ability to look at a case-by-case basis in terms of the compatibility with adjacent buildings and the overall aesthetics. There's times for some setbacks and times when you
I agree.
Shouldn't need a setback.
And this won't change building code requirements for setbacks when there's openings or fire department setbacks when necessary. This doesn't change any of that.
And staff's satisfied with these last group of changes on setback?
Yes, sir.
That it's workable?
That's correct.
Doable?
Again, Tom, I'd like to add, what we're talking about is changing the downtown business district to allow these, but it doesn't affect that one half block all the way around the square that's the historic district.
Right.
That's still in existence, and the rules and requirements do not apply. We have to, whoever comes in with a proposal must satisfy the historical preservation district if they're in that particular half block area.
That's correct. Anything within the historic preservation district will still have to go before the Historic Preservation Commission.
Question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So to further clarify, this is just going to change the setback, current setback requirement. It's going to reduce this recreational amenities requirement, but it will not increase the density per 7,500 square foot lot that was originally discussed.
The residential density is 58 units to the acre. That doesn't change. However, in order to get additional units on a 7,500 square foot yacht, right now you're limited to 3 unless you provide these recreational amenities. If this amendment were to pass the city council and these recreational amenities are deleted, then a 7,500 square foot lot based on 5,800 units to the acre, 58 units to the acre could have about 9 residential units on it, instead of the 3 that limits it now because of these additional amenity requirements.
Well, it eliminates that 3,500 minimum, doesn't it?
It eliminates the...
Wasn't there a minimum 3,500 feet before?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. All right, so it would go straight to 58 units.
Correct.
Period. Okay.
And again, it's talking about, like one of the public's comments that I had to address was we're not talking about 200 units here, 200 units here. We're talking about 3 here, 6 there. So.
Right. Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
So one other comment.
Yes, sir.
5,800 or the 58 units per acre is in the general plan, and that was part of what was approved.
It's in the land development code. But the general plan supports very clearly increasing residential density in the downtown.
Okay.
Of course, again, the number of units would be a modified high-rise, but the high-rise could not be over 50 feet without a special use permit.
Right. Okay, any other questions?
Now, whether or not we're going to have a market for that is if come.
Yeah, that's right.
Who knows?
But,
You may want to take some public comment, see if anyone wants to.
Oh,
address
okay.
this.
Anybody in the audience like to speak to the downtown? I think we already had some comments. Nope. Okay. Then I'm going to close the public hearing.
Motion?
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the proposed amendment to Article 4, Section 4 93, 8 or B5, whatever, take your pick, and number 493F of the Land Development Code to amend the multifamily residential density and the dimensional standards of the downtown business district, in parentheses, the DBT LDC 16-001.
I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Anything we need to end? Are you happy with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, we're on.
Just as a side note to that, I think the gentleman mentioned about the quantum condominiums, the one you approved on.
Yeah.
That did pass preliminary plat at City Council this past Tuesday.
Oh, okay. All right, item 3.
Vote on that, you remember?
No, sir. I think it was on the consent agenda. It was passed on the consent.
Okay, public hearing item for proposed change of land use, Green Lane.
Correct.
Okay, from single family to RO.
Yes, sir. So this is an application that came back second time initially back in last year, earlier this year. It was withdrawn for an office building, and the applicant reconsidered the options for the development of the parcel should it be approved as a zoning change to residential office. As you can see, the property is currently zoned single family 18. It's about a half an acre, 0.54 acres of a site. Under current zoning, it would be permitted a single family house and a guest house. And that's pretty much all that would be allowed there on the corner. So the applicant, in order to, is proposing to do 2 duplexes, convert the existing house into a duplex and add a second building as a duplex on this corner.
So it would still be residential?
It would still be residential, but the zoning would have to change to something other than SF-18 in order to allow it to have more than their single-family residence and guest house.
Okay.
Now, the reason they chose residential office is partly because there's business general across the street and residential office zoning on the northeast corner of that same intersection. Also, the Willow Creek corridor plan, as you all know, specifically mentions residential office as a suggested change in land use. So to be consistent with the Willow Creek corridor study, that is why residential office was chosen versus, say, business general or some other type of zoning classification like multifamily that would also allow the same thing.
But this is more more compatible with single family. The RO district.
The RO district is
supposed to be a buffer between
like the least,
family.
yes. It's neighborhood-oriented business, residential office are the least intense commercial zoning districts we have. Right. That is correct. It is not consistent with the general plan, however, so if this were to move forward, it would need a recommendation for both a zoning change and an amendment to the land use plan and the general plan because it is currently designated as low to medium density residential.
Okay.
As you know, I was asked, you received by email from me about 60 letters in opposition. As it probably blew up your memory on your computer. 4 additional letters came in late yesterday, and out of respect for the applicants, or excuse me, for the people in the community that wrote these letters, I told them that I would make sure you got those 4 new letters. So, give this to the chairman.
Were these the ones you sent out, Darla? Did you send these same ones out?
The only ones, that packet includes all the ones you had by email plus 4 new ones. And the one on top is the letter from the contiguous property owner, this property right here to the west. So that's why I left that property, that's why I left that one on top, because that's from the property owner that has most standing in this opposition effort. So with that, I know the public's here, and that's it. Unless you have any questions for me. Yes, sir.
Commissioners, any
I got
questions?
one quick question. What is low to medium residential density as opposed to RO?
What is low to medium residential density, says it right there in parentheses, would permit 1 to 7 dwelling units per acre. That's the zoning designation, or excuse me, land use designation in the general plan. Residential office is a zoning designation in the land development code, not the general plan. So if you were to amend the general plan, it would change the land use designation
So
to
in the
commercial.
general plan, low to medium density is,
1 to 7 dwelling units to the acre, and it's residential.
so in this particular case, it could be 3.5 units, is that the sense?
No, it's a range. It doesn't set any particular, it could just be 1 unit to the acre. It's a range for different zoning classifications. It could fit SF6, SF9, SF18.
What does RO allow?
RO allows,
17 units, isn't it?
So that's why we need the change, general plan change, right?
correct.
Okay.
Residential office would allow, in a multifamily dwelling situation, which this would be, this is really for 2 duplexes, 4 units. 3 units for the first 13,500 square feet, and then an additional unit would need 4,500 square feet. So this is well within that limits if it was changed to RO. The base density for RO is 10 units to the acre via a PAD, but this isn't a planned area development.
Okay, but would the base, would the, what you just mentioned there allow more than 7 units?
Now, at half an acre, even if this was a straight 10, it would be allowed 5. So they're asking for 4.
So why do you need a general plan amendment?
Why do you need a general plan amendment?
Yeah, because you can build it under RO and you're still under the general plan's max.
I believe because the residential office designation is under our commercial zoning districts. And the residential office designation allows commercial uses and residential uses, where the single family 18 is only purely residential.
Okay.
That's confusing, but
It's just a paperwork thing. It's a paper issue.
It's a paper issue, yes.
so the zoning thing is for the general plan, most specifically.
The zoning thing, no.
Other way around?
Yeah.
The single family 18 is what exists there now. So that is only allows a single family residence and a guest house. If they went to RO, that would permit what I just quoted you as far as the density at 3 units for 13,500 plus another
Okay.
4,500. So the zoning has to be consistent with the general plan, and in order to get to 4 units, they have to change the zoning.
Okay, anybody in the audience like to speak?
I'm not going to talk about cell phones.
Thank you.
Mine is simpler than that. I was at the last meeting when this project was brought up, and I'm the president of the Homeowner Association, which is Santa Fe Springs, which is just down off of Green Lane. You can see it, some part of the street is on your map there. The concern that I have, that's one of the reasons I objected to this project, was I don't know how you're going to get on and off of that lot. In other words, where is it going to come on Green Lane, or is it going to go back to Willow Creek? Huh?
I think.
Green Lane.
Green Lane.
Yeah.
Okay.
However, right now, we're looking at the zoning of the site.
Yes.
And then the next stage would be when they come in with an actual site plan and a building plan.
Okay, well, my concern
those
is still this. I'm the Homeowners Association president, which represents 40 different
I
lots.
would imagine the architect and engineer on the site should be well informed of that so that they can bring your people in to have a conversation when they're ready to start doing architectural drawings.
And the reason it's important is because when the commercial unit went in,
right,
They really put it too close to the main street, and that's why you have a no right turn on red. And we have one exit out of that commercial area that already drops into Green Lane. If you're going to have more cars coming onto Green Lane, it's a pretty hazardous area. Because even the exit off of the commercial center is a very narrow road. You can't get two cars through that. And we know at some point it's going to be major accidents, and there's been some there already. So we're concerned about that. That's one of the main reasons that I personally objected to it. I think other people, I'll pass it on to somebody else, but that's my main objection in the Homeowners Association as far as Santa Fe Springs is that putting things too close together, you end up getting a more difficult problem on Green Lane, which is a pretty narrow road, actually. It's called a lane, remember. Okay? Thank you.
And again, there's a proposal that's not the one that they might come in on a building permit for, which would be handled at a future date, but here is a proposal showing 2 curb cuts up on Green Lane coming in to service those 2.
Isn't that eliminating a curb cut along Willow Creek, though?
No, sir.
No? On the existing single-family resident?
No, there's
It
no.
comes off of Green Lane? It comes off.
It comes off of Green Lane.
Would a site plan come back to P&Z or?
No, sir.
No?
No.
But we could ask that it come back so that, couldn't we, so that we could,
This
is almost a site plan what they had there, I think.
This is how the property looks right now.
Yeah.
It is a site plan, but we're just looking at zoning.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. You done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
My name's Curtis Hafer. I live on 950 Garland Drive, which is the street behind it.
Okay.
And I don't have one of the letters in, but I am opposed to this also. So we moved in about 15 years ago on this nice dirt road. It's been paved since then, and it's okay because it keeps the dust down. But it's a nice dead-end street. It's a single-family environment. It's got the old oak trees. It wasn't one of these big planned neighborhoods like, all the cookie cutters. We love it like that. We want to keep it like that. We like the single-family homes around the area. We'd like to keep it that way because we don't want to set a precedence because a lot of us in that area have half-acre lots. And it'd be very easy for me to build. I got a lot next to me that's pretty wide open. It's very easy for me to build something there and rent it out or something, but I don't want that. That's not why we moved to that neighborhood. We moved there because we loved it and we loved the quaintness of it and the single family area with the little larger lots. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Tom Campbell, I live at 910 Garland Drive. I'm directly south of the property that you're talking about. And the reason we moved in there was because they were single families. It's nice and quiet. You got a picture. Where's the one with the pictures of it?
There's the site plan on it?
Yeah, no, the one you got in your hand.
This one here? Okay. Let me zoom out.
Can you move it up? Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can just barely see mine there on the end of it. Anyway.
This is probably you here, I think.
Yeah, I'm right at the street. That one right there, yeah. Okay. And I'm directly behind it, and the only way that I think if they do a road, they'll probably be right at my property line and their line. We like it there the way it is. It's single family. That's why we bought there 6 years ago. And I just don't see no need for them to do that. So.
Isn't there a lot in between yours?
No,
Yes.
sir.
This
and the
is
subject property?
This is
a fence divides our property.
Well, this
Whose piece is that one right there that he was pointing to?
the red outlines the subject property we're talking about today. There is a strip that belongs to this house next door to the subject property.
That's what I was referring to.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't. Yeah. I thought our fence was right there with them.
No,
and I just put up a new fence there too. So.
There's a little bit of a buffer there.
Well, hopefully you didn't put it on the other guy's property.
Well, actually, it was on mine.
So there's like 50 feet there and no driveway. between that new building and your property?
That area I just striped in red it belongs to the property next door to the subject property. It's an L shape.
That would be.
Yeah. So yeah, there's no driveway there, and you're about 50 feet away. That's pretty good.
No, I'm thinking that's where they would have to put the driveway if they come out on Willow Creek is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
They're coming in off of Green.
You're above them quite a bit too, aren't you?
Just a little bit, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One other comment. It's in the staff report, but I'll mention it publicly as well. As you know, if there was a more intensely zoned district or a use next to a lesser intense use, in this case residential office as proposed and single family next door, the zoning code has a section called residential protection standards, which would require some landscape buffering and the like between the two uses.
Okay.
And I'd like to not see it happen.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is the applicant here? You want to talk about it?
Chairman, Vice Chairman, and Commission, I'm Stan Hitson. I'm with Michael Taylor Architects, representing Mr. Frank Hahn, who is our client and property owner. We feel like that this was a more desirable infill, or not infill, but option for this corner lot, given the general plan, given the recommendation for low to medium density residential. And so even though this body in the May 15th of last year approved this and sent it to City Council with a recommendation for approval for a 6,000 square foot commercial building, right before that council meeting, that particular project was pulled, and we decided to redesign it and look at something that seemed much more appropriate as a buffer project from the intense traffic on Willow Creek into the neighborhood. The property, we've increased distances from the corner for the driveways as they exist in that map. They're sort of rough and loose and gravel, so we'd clean up this a lot. The property use is not going to be significantly different than what it has been over the last 20 years since Mr. Hahn has enjoyed ownership of this property. What's not really obvious here is the grades and contours. This building that's being proposed to be added is set well within the setbacks, leaving plenty of opportunity for landscape buffers. The height differentials between this particular building and the property, because it's going up a hill quite a bit, is going to minimize the impact of a two-story structure there on surrounding buildings. And it's Mr. Hahn is rented primarily to Embry-Riddle students and young adults who aren't there a lot of the summer. So there's a lot of the summers. So it's not even a potential. It has a potential for year-round occupancy, but it hasn't been the case for the existing double unit that's in the front. So it just seems to me like it's a real good option for buffering the surrounding areas. If you look at the building proximity that we're considering adding in this site plan, its proximity to surrounding dwellings is actually a greater distance from the homes to the west and to the south and others than the existing situation is in the neighborhood. So it doesn't feel at all crowded, like he's pushing up on the neighborhood, and just trying to create some additional rental opportunity here and improve his property. And we would entertain any questions, both for Mr. Hahn and myself.
Any questions, guys? No? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else?
I'd like to comment again.
Sure.
Is the proposal, is that the layout of the proposal?
That's it.
That's it. Well, see, the problem you have here is you have two outlets onto Green Lane that are going right directly at the outlet in the commercial center. Okay. There's no room for cars in there to safely drive through there. I mean, that's a very tight area. So, I mean, I can see what he's saying, but
well, the street width's not changing.
No, but I'm looking at right here, if you look at that little commercial right there, that little outlet, you can't even have two cars come out of there at the same time, okay? Now we're gonna put two more outlets on Green Lane with I'm assuming multiple cars or whatever. I still see it as not an improvement. The initial problem was this development, the commercial was too far into Willow Creek. all right? And so you're dealing with, you pull up to that turn and you try to make a left or a right, you can't see those cars coming at 40 to 50 miles an hour up that street. And it's a real problem because we've got 40 houses and we go, which is just a little bit down from there, and this is how you get onto the main drag. So it's a serious safety problem unless you can get that to where you want to go have a proper exit on Willow Creek and not go onto Green Lane.
Well, I don't think they're going to get an exit on it. You're not going to get onto Willow Creek.
Green Lane?
You're too close to the intersection.
Is there a traffic light at Green Lane?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if this goes to planning staff, traffic would look at it, right?
Yes, sir. They already have. They've looked at it as part of the pre-application conference when this started.
Okay.
And they did recommend some, I'm sorry that somebody's not here, they recommended some off-site improvements, but it wasn't something that stood out in my memory as a problem.
Okay. But they would have to satisfy traffic.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Hello, everybody. My name is David Arroyo. I live at 917 Green Lane. I'm 5 lots to the west.
Okay.
Born and raised on that property. Haven't known another home. I wanted to also talk about the 64 letters of opposition. They're all from immediate people in the neighborhood. They're not from people across town. I got people from across Willow Creek that stare at the property. I've actually spoke to business owners that were opposed to increased traffic and a change to the aesthetics of the actual area. I mean, we're zoned single family. We've always been zoned single family. We have residents that I've known for 40 years, you know, is when I was a little kid, when I was born, 34 years. And then we also have new people. They live in this place, stay in this place, and buy homes in this place for how it is now. And if we continue to go with a trend of, which I've seen in LA, and especially in Portland now is the new trend, to go into single-family home, established neighborhoods, rezone them, and build condos, duplexes, apartments, and it completely erodes the essence of a neighborhood. Completely. We've accepted the commercial buildings there. It's pretty quiet. We don't have, I mean, we have traffic, but it's not ridiculous. And it's manageable right now. And I think putting these in gives an opportunity to make that corner right there, when you turn right onto Green Lane, is a blind turn. So anyone that's exiting the commercial area, you better be quick because people can't see you. They're flying around that corner. And I've seen, it's weekly, I don't want to exaggerate and say it's 100 times a week, but weekly I see a potential accident, people slamming on their brakes for T-bone situations and bottlenecking in that. If we're going to be dumping, I'm guessing 10 parking spaces for a property like that, for that many units, 10 to 12 parking spaces.
4 units.
Yeah, 4 units. So how many cars is that? How many parking spaces?
8 at the most, probably.
You'll be dumping more into that area, which is we already have problems with. My next thing was, people moving into the neighborhood. The people next door, they're recently married. This is their first home. They don't have the choice of moving. I've heard people say if this goes through, they're going to sell the home. These people, they've been there 30 years. I think it erodes the essence of that neighborhood. I know these people, so I talk to them. They saw me play as a kid, and we're just trying to keep it the way it is. There's places for it, and there's not places for it. What's wrong with staying with single family? I also wanted to emphasize that on those letters, you have 3 letters that are the direct property owners surrounding that property, all 3, next door, the kitty corner, and then Tom and Rosemary. I also wanted to emphasize that the house that's 2 doors down is Wes Stanfield. He was on the committee for the Willow Creek plan, and you have his letter of opposition. So.
But the Willow Creek plan is showing it as commercial, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Willow Creek Plan recommends a zoning change to residential office.
See, the problem is, all along Willow Creek, and in most of the busy streets in Prescott, any single-family homes on those streets have been converting. I mean, we've looked at, 20 properties on Willow Creek along there. It's farther south than this, but this is the most northern.
Mr. Chairman, again, you're correct.
And we've tried to make them into the least objectionable business, which is RO. It's supposed to be a transitional thing between residential, but it's they've been changing and changing. I've been here a lot of years, and there's been a lot of those changes along Willow Creek Road, and it's just, I don't know, it's pretty inevitable.
And
Yeah, we
Willow
were-
Creek
oh,
Road has
excuse me,
been
sir.
designated, according to these plans, as an arterial
Right.
traffic. one of
So,
the
so it's a
arterial
hard
streets.
sell.
We're not talking about a limited highway arterial.
So it's a
but
hard
one
sell
of the-
trying to keep those properties on those busy corners along Willow Creek single family.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were just trying to keep with it's an established neighborhood. It's always been single family. That thing across the street,
Right.
the commercial buildings, that was all rocks and trees when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Even the gated community was. And I understand, I'm not against, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not against change. I'm not against it at all, but positive change. You know what I mean? We view it as a negative, moving forward with positive change. We're supportive of that. They want to build a house and a guest house? Absolutely. Nobody is arguing that at all. They want to put a new house on that property. But I've never heard anybody say to a real estate agent, can you find me a nice, quiet neighborhood next to some duplexes? So that's our argument with it, just maintaining what it's been.
Well, there are not going to be too many people building on a real busy corner
So-
across from an office complex.
And the current, like he said, they have the current residents there, the renters from Embry-Riddle. Never had a noise complaint, nothing.
How many students do you have living there?
I don't know. They're the property owners.
Four.
That many?
And they're quiet. We've never had any problems with that, and that's why we'd like to keep it that way. We don't
Well,
have
Val,
cars coming and going all the time.
Given
so.
the proposal, 4 units there is only going to have 8 parking spaces. If you got 4 now, I just don't see the magnitude. But thank you for your comments.
Yeah, it was a lady in the gated community who commented. She was a real estate broker in California, and she was just talking about going with, you rezone one, you continue to rezone more because you see it, and that's what they were worried about, is that we rezone one and then somebody else is going to do it, and then we'll just leave. I want to live in a neighborhood with houses. That's why you move to a neighborhood with houses. And I only put that to individually as you. If you bought your home and then somebody wants to build duplexes next to your home, how do you feel? If you're for it, then you're for it. But if you're against it, you're against it. So that was my only thing. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, it does require 10 spaces because you need 2 for guest parking.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's only 4 duplexes, right?
Property
8.
owner.
Yes, sir.
Frank Hahn, 1343 Gray Eagle is where I live presently. I lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. I wanted to emphasize that the existing structure that's there now is not going to be added on to in any way. The footprint at all is going to stay the same. It has been a duplex for 20 years. That's how long I've owned it, and it's been rented as a duplex for all of that time. Like I mentioned, there's 4 Embry-Riddle students in there now. The preceding 3 years, I also had Embry-Riddle kids in there now.
So you're only adding a duplex, basically.
Yes, just one single structure.
Okay.
It's not equivalent, I guess, to a guest house, but it's 2 structures on that property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And
That's an important issue.
just from my experience, I own some apartments. Apartments are in real short supply in town. It's, and this is a very small, it's adding a duplex. So it's not, it's a pretty small addition to the neighborhood, in my opinion.
Okay. Yes, sir. Ma'am.
Hi, my name is Millie Iorio, 917 Green Lane, which is 4 houses away from the corner. My question, if the zoning were changed, does he have to comply with what he's saying now, or could it be changed where we would have a Circle K or a car wash or something else on that corner?
That's a good point.
It is a traffic problem. When I turn left onto Green Lane to go home, the driveway that was shown to you about the complex across, I can't tell you how many times I've had to slam. I go slow, but they can't see. So my concern would be traffic. We've already had a major accident on that a few months ago. I'm just concerned. I've lived in my home for 35 years. I've been in Prescott since 1980. I know we need businesses. I know people want to make money. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is I love my home. I don't want to move. And I don't want a business on the corner. The people across the street, they did a lovely job. Architecturally, it's a confined parking area, and the people come and go, so it's not like every second of the day. But having a duplex on the corner would just change the whole makeup of our neighborhood that we've lived in. I know people there that have lived there for over 40 years. And
Well, it's still residential, though.
as a homeowner, I'm just asking, does it would they be able to change it
I would
once
doubt,
the zoning
I don't
is
know what you can build there, but I would doubt that you're going to build a duplex and then tear it down in a few years
No,
and build
but
a
I'm saying,
circle
does
K.
he have
I
to
think
stick
the answer to
the
your
plan?
question is the residential office is a residential office. It's like going to see an architect who's living in a house, but he's got his office there, or a lawyer going to his house. That's the type of transitional zoning it is. It's not the zoning for a 7-Eleven or a business use where you can have cars coming in 24 hours a day.
So it's
If
just
somebody
increasing-
wanted to buy it in the future, they would have to go through a zoning process in order to change it from residential office to highway commercial or business or some other use that would allow, say, a 7-Eleven store to go on that corner.
Okay,
One
so
thing-
just to clarify, that corner would always be residential, it's just no longer single family.
That's right.
It would be adding one more unit onto a lot that's currently got a duplex.
Well, you're talking
in it.
duplexes
Two.
and an office. So you said 10, but if there's an office there,
10
don't you
parking
need
spaces.
more
Well,
parking?
let me answer. You got a couple questions I can answer for you.
Oh, I'm done.
No, that's
I
good.
just-
Sure.
I wanted these just to,
Sure.
worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But the one question about could it be like a 7-Eleven or something? The application for a rezoning requires the submittal of a site plan for the proposed zoning change, and that is this site plan here. They are part of the record as a package. So this rezoning application includes, as part of the record, this site plan application. They can't change that. If somebody were in the future, first of all, the residential office zoning district wouldn't allow the types of business you're concerned about, and I agree with you. That would be, to see like a gas station or something would be horrible. But to change it to something like business general, which would be another higher intensity, they would have to go through this process all over again with another one of these types of maps to show exactly what the request was for.
One more quick question.
Sure.
No, I forgot it.
I can't
Okay.
hear.
It'll come to me and I'll yell.
Okay. All right. Sure.
I believe he's single family. Does duplexes fall under single family homes or single family zoning?
They're considered the same in the code.
Are they?
No, the
Right?
single.
I
no,
mean,
they're
as far as
considered-
density and setbacks and. Right, building code, they're considered the same.
So under zoning or single family, a duplex isn't allowed. Is
Under
not allowed.
zoning, they could have
that's
a
true.
house and an attached guest house or a detached guest house. The reason it's a duplex now is it's probably been that way long before the existing zoning ever came into play.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
The zoning came in, to answer the zoning came in sometime around 1938.
Yes, ma'am.
Because prior to that, in the United States as a whole, and you might look at me and say, what, have you been around since then? But there wasn't any zoning.
One question for residents of Prescott.
What's that?
If this
I
is
can't-
for
you gotta
the-
speak in the microphone,
you
ma'am.
as residents,
Ma'am, could you
not
speak in the
of a
microphone?
zoning commission, but as residents. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Kind of short.
What were you saying?
So, as a resident, can you understand that the entire neighborhood is against this? So is there a precedent? Do we have to be punished? But, I mean, you've gotten like almost 65 letters. And there are people out there that can't leave their homes to come here because they're elderly. I just want to know about the precedent. I mean, they talked about Prescott. I love Prescott, and I'm not leaving Prescott.
May I help with that as well?
And the other end of the scale is, first of all, the Willow Creek Corridor Plan, which is a specific plan for Willow Creek. And it took in consideration that that's a very busy arterial street, okay? That's where you put your businesses, along the busy arterial street. The other thing is, this man has a right, a property right, to develop his piece of property. If you own that piece of property, you'd have that right too. And so he's not asking for anything really unreasonable. He's asking for something that's pretty much set in the Willow Creek Corridor Plan.
Actually, I'd like to address one other thing. It's a great question. It's an excellent question. This body is a recommending body to the City Council. Whenever a rezoning occurs and there's significant opposition to it, normally a rezoning without opposition would require a simple majority, 4 out of 7. When you have a significant amount of opposition, like your effort with the 65 letters, which is a great effort, it would require a supermajority vote by the City Council to change the zoning. So the effort is still important. It's what, 6 out of 7, Tom?
6 out of 7.
So 6, instead of just 4 out of 7, in order to get this rezoned with the City Council, and your letters will proceed to that level, I will make sure of that they would need 6 out of 7 votes because of your effort in opposition.
Well, good. I just wanted to know where we stood as homeowners and citizens of this city.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Sit down.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, guys.
Okay.
What was that?
It's George.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Yep.
Like your comments?
Are we voting on this today?
Yes, we could.
I
don't see any reason to postpone it. I don't think it's going to make any difference.
I've got a couple of comments now. This is a corner location. It's a intersection with a traffic light. It's within 300 feet of Willow Creek Road, which all the time I've been in Prescott, which is some 30 years, we've talked about the Willow Creek Road corridor. And the sense of the properties along those areas would be something other than just single family homes. To address a commercial use on that corner, I don't think that would ever happen. You probably would not find a user who would want to be on that corner that would have to have a lot of traffic. I do recall a number of years ago when the, when I think it's that Santa Fe Business Park?
Yes.
Yeah. There was some petroleum company that was catering to the city, and I think what happened on that project is the result of what you're dealing with today. You got a traffic issue because of the site and the location of the driveways on Green Lane. I think the city did give some leniency to that development. That's why you have the impediments that you currently have. This gentleman here in Santa Fe Springs was mentioning it. I don't think you're going to have high intensity use here. The use I see that they're proposing here is so minimal. I can tell you that if that house burned down, you probably wouldn't see anybody build a single family house on that property.
No.
And I think when you look at it from that perspective, this is not a bad use. If that house were gone, nobody would put up a single family home on that hard. It's called a hard corner. It's got an intersection, lots of traffic. I see it all the time, lots of accidents. I get it. I think the use being proposed here is minimal enough of an increase. If there's 4 people living in that home and have been for a great number of years, I don't think you're going to see a massive increase. If I'm the neighbor I probably would like to see things stay the same, but I also know in my heart, anything along the main corridor is going to be more high intensity than my house. And if I'm there, I'm walking around with petitions saying, take this guy's offer. This is the better offer than what you might face later on. So I'm all for this. I think it's the right location. It's on the right street for changing it. And I think the change is so minimal that I couldn't say no to this.
Commissioners?
Well, I have to kind of echo Mr. Mayberg's comments. I think it does fit in with the Willow Creek plan, but I can certainly appreciate the opposition from the neighborhood, a long-time single-family residential neighborhood with a lot of concern there. So I can state my inclination, but full disclosure, I'm probably going to have to abstain because Dr. Iorio is my wife's physician, and I think, don't I have to do that? No?
No.
Okay.
Paying you to do that.
No.
You would only have a conflict of interest whether, and this is by state law, whether you gain something or lose something, either property ownership or money. So your life isn't one of the exceptions, unfortunately.
She would probably have a different opinion there.
And an abstention vote,
right.
I think, is counted as a
well, in that case,
yes vote.
I
It's a
think,
yes vote. So if you abstain, it's a yes vote. So if you want to vote no, then definitely
Right,
vote
if you abstain, it's a yes vote.
It's considered a positive.
Okay, any other comments, commissioners? Huh? No comments? Go ahead, George.
No, I kind of agree with Ken here that this is a very minor impact. In fact, I always try to look at the good out of something, and I would try to work with the mitigation between the buffering and the fact that there's going to be new landscaping and new surfaced roadways and all that, to where it's really going to be an upgrade to the existing what sits there. It's an opportunity to make things better, improve buffering with the neighbors and things. So I would be definitely for this. I think it's a very minor additional impact, and it can turn out to the positive.
And it's going to have a very residential look, right? To match the neighborhood?
and I would add one more point is that I would encourage the residents to bring their concerns directly to the city council.
Sure.
That's the appropriate venue for that. Also, their concerns about traffic also would be the appropriate venue for it. And, you know, we're just looking at compatibility with zoning here.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion if I can find it here. I move to recommend approval of RZ 16-004. Do we have to do these separately?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
To amend the 2015 general use plan from low density residential density to commercial.
Second.
Do we have to vote on each one of those separately?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. For that specific, you have a second?
Yep.
Any
second.
discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'd also like to make the motion to
Opposed? Okay.
to approve rezone parcel 116-06-060B at 903 Green Lane from single family 18 to residential office.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Opposed? Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, one opposed. All right, thank you, everybody. Any other current events or anything?
Oh, didn't
Current events or anything?
Tom?
What?
No, sir. No follow-up from us on anything.
Didn't Tom Guy say he was going to bring lunch in for us?
Dinner.
Bye.
He said if we finish.
Okay, any other information we need?
Sitting back there eating
No.
Taco Bell.
We're adjourned.